And so you'll have to put up with me going through the chair's announcements and that start with. So everybody's in position. Here we go. And I have forgot my reading glasses today or misplaced them. So hopefully I will get it all correct. Okay, thank you. This meeting is taking place in the council chamber, Shepton Mallet, and we have members in the planning committee, members of the planning committee, officers, public speakers, and members of the public physically present in the chamber. We also have members of the public watching the meeting on Teams. Cameras within the council chamber allow us to film the meeting for viewers on Teams and also record the meeting. Therefore, any members of the public present should be aware that they may be recorded even if they are not participating in the meeting. If this causes you any concern, please let me know now. No? Thank you. Members who have brought their own device with them should ensure that their cameras are switched off and, very importantly, their device, microphone and speakers are muted for the duration of the meeting. Otherwise, this causes feedback on the council sound system. Public speakers contributing to the meeting virtually should switch their cameras off and put their microphones on mute until they are invited to speak by the chair. It is not permitted for any other member of the public viewing by Teams to contribute to the meeting at any time. Should any member of the planning committee wish to speak, please raise your hand and catch the attention of myself, the vice chair, Edric, the legal advisor, Martin, or lead officers, Anna and Tess and Simon. Oh, I don't know if Anna's here, is she? Yeah. And also we've got Alison as well, so she'll keep an eye out as well for us today. And when the members are, when the members are in the chamber speak, remember to switch on your desk microphone so that all those in attendance and viewing can hear you. Please do not use the chat function within Teams for anything. All contributions must be made verbally. Please can all mobile phones be set to silent? Thank you for that. And I will also add, can all members, etc., be remembered to be respectful to each other, to the members of the public, and to the officers. Very important. We like to have a nice, respectful, and calm meeting. Thank you. So now we'll move on to where am I to? Apologies for absence, I believe.
Thanks, Chair. So we've got apologies from Councillor Helen Kay is actually on a leave of absence. So Councillor Michael Dunk is subbing for her, and Councillor Dawn Denton is due to arrive in due course.
Thank you, Helen. And next we'll move on to the minutes from the previous meeting. Starts at page 17. I just have to find that myself. It seems to be difficult. Right, okay. Apologies for absence. Okay, here we go. Everybody ready? Page 17. Page 18. Page 19. Page 20. Page 21. Page 22. Page 23. Page 24. Page 25. Page 26. Page 27. Page 28. Page 29. Page 30. Page 31. And that's it, I think. Okay, next we move on to the,
Yeah, we need a proposal.
we need a proposer, yeah. I was going to get there. Okay, so proposer is Edric, and a seconder, please. Okay, all those in favour?
James, you were second.
Who was the seconder, please? I didn't see.
Councillor Hyde.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay, so that's finished. Okay, let's move on to. Right, we're moving on to agenda item 5 now, which
So declarations of interest.
oh yeah, declarations of interest first. Do we have any declarations of interest? Edric?
I'd like to declare that I'm predetermined on agenda item 9 and will leave the room.
Thank you, Edric. And I believe there is a little note I have to read from Councillor Dawn Denton, who isn't here. And I will read it out so that people understand. And it says, I would like to let you know that for agenda item 8, Solar Road Solar Farm, I know one of the landowner's brother, Andy Fussell, is the landowner, and he is in business with his brother, and he is in business with his brother, Tim Fussell. I know Tim through business, not done any formal business with him, but have attended business events at his farm and worked with him briefly during the pandemic for a national networking organisation, but not socially. Okay, I think that's fine. So everybody's aware of that one. Martin, would you like to pop in on that?
Yes, I think Councillor Denton just wants that minuted, not as a formal interest.
Great, I think we understand that, don't we? Yeah, that's fine. So that's just a minute in. Okay, now we can move on to the substantial stuff. We go to number.
Public question.
What? The what?
Public question.
Oh, we have public question time, but we don't have any, I don't believe. So there's no public questions. And now we will move on to agenda item 5 at last. Okay, the first one is from Kirsty Black, case officer, and it is the field at the south of Cedarwood House, Holcombe Hill, Holcombe, Shepton Mallet and Somerset. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This application is brought to Planning Committee because the agent is a member of staff. As you've kindly mentioned, this is a prior approval application for the change of use of an existing agricultural building into one dwelling house under Schedule 2, Part 3, Class Q of the Town and Country Planning Order 2015. The proposal also includes operational development. It takes place in a field to the south of Cedarwood House. Now, as you can see from the report pack, this is a prior approval application and it's not a regular planning application under consideration. The proposed development is being assessed against relevant legislation to determine whether the development constitutes permitted development. One such condition is whether the conversion can be undertaken without the need to add structural integrity to the existing building. My recommendation is that it cannot, and that prior approval should be refused. The amount of building operations proposed is of such a magnitude that it goes beyond what can reasonably be described as a conversion. So from this aerial photograph, you can just about make out there is a detached dwelling beneath the line of trees. And to the right or to the east is Holcombe Hill. This is a location and block plan. You can see here, this is the existing barn with an access leading onto Holcombe Hill. These are the proposed elevations. The proposed residential dwelling would be on 2 stories. This is a photograph of the agricultural structure. You can see that it's a lightweight structure with metal cladding to the walls and to the roof, and with a large opening to the front elevation. This is a side view just showing its context within the existing field. Again, this is a photo of the interior. You can see the existing metal profiling. There is an earthen compacted floor. Again, you're looking at the existing access towards the structure, which is just here. You can just make it out within the trees. And this is looking back at the access. So Holcombe Hill is just about here. And that concludes my presentation.
And thank you very much, Kirsty. Right, next we go to the speakers, and we have Phil Gate from the Parish Council, please.
Thank you, Chair. I am until this evening the Vice Chair of Holcombe Parish Council. On behalf of the Council, I ask you agree with the officer's recommendation and refuse this application. We do not agree that the location is suitable and strongly disagree with the proposed dwelling. Amongst many things, it should have a south-facing roof for solar panels. As a board, you normally only approve an application to build a dwelling if you agree that the location was suitable and that the proposed dwelling was suitable for the site. As has already been said, this application is being determined under the Town and Country Planning Order 2015 and a lot more. We find it totally incredible that under the terms of this order, it's likely that if this agricultural building had been erected with a more substantial load-bearing structure and a few other minor changes, you would have had to approve it. Thank you.
Oh, thank you very much. And next one is Rachel, please. Rachel Tabman.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to you today. The applicants John and Anita Barter are seeking prior approval for conversion of a barn on a small area of agricultural land adjacent to their house in Holcombe and immediately adjacent to the housing development limit. Anita has lived in Holcombe all her life and John since 1971. They constructed their home themselves and they, along with their daughter and son-in-law, run a successful transport and haulage business in Frome. Anita's family were local farmers and the barn was built over 30 years ago as part of a larger farming unit. However, in 2020, the land was split between relatives with Anita and John retaining the barn. The building is now redundant and they are looking to convert it into a modest 3-bedroom dwelling. Their intention is for a family member to occupy the dwelling and not to be sold for financial gain. The concerns of the officers have been explained in their reports. However, the structural report submitted confirms the building is structurally capable of conversion. Furthermore, many barns do not have solid block walls. They are either constructed of metal sheeting like this one or have half block, half hit and miss timber elevations, which either require replacement or internal enclosure in order to be converted. Many barns also do not have concrete floors, especially those used for storage rather than livestock. A new floor would in any case be required to comply with building regs and would not affect the structure of the building. The council and the planning inspectorate have granted permission many times to convert buildings very similar to this one, including those needing new concrete floors that have walls that do not meet the roof or the floor, are metal sheet clad, or have large openings. The MPBG guidance states that for the building to function as a dwelling, it may be appropriate to undertake internal structural works, including to allow for a new floor, the insertion of an upper floor, or internal walls, and that these are not prohibited by Class Q. In fact, an appeal was recently allowed in Norton St Philip, where the inspector found that a new concrete floor, structural works to insert a first floor, timber encapsulation for the hit and miss walling, and glazing to close the large openings were all permitted development, did not comprise a fresh build, and were reasonably less necessary for a conversion. In our view, therefore, this proposal does not represent a fresh build. It will retain its roof, its walls, and its steel structure. It is capable of conversion, and all the works required are permitted under Class Q. Councillors are therefore respectfully requested to approve the application and allow another much-needed dwelling to be provided. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. I think we've got nobody else in the public to speak here, so we will go to the ward or division, sorry, I've got to get it right. Division councillors first. Edric, I think you'll probably be the first one to speak.
I'll reserve comment on this one. I think I'll wait and see what other people come in with first before I comment. Okay.
Okay, thank you, Edric. Tony?
Thank you, Chair. Having listened to the technical nature of the reason for the officer's refusal, I can't think of any reason why I would be voting to go against the officer. So I will be supporting the officer's recommendations.
Thank you, Tony. Any members, please? Adam?
Thank you, Chair. I'm just going to check that this is for prior approval. This is not an application for planning permission, so it's not a decision on whether the development should get planning permission or not. Because if we refuse this, then they would have to apply to get planning permission. So we can keep those issues entirely separate. Is that right?
Yeah. Who would like to answer that question?
I think, as the report pack says, it's not. You're right, Councillor Boyden. It's not an application for plan permission. Clearly, if members you agree with the officer recommendation, the applicant would have the opportunity to apply for plan permission. Yes, we would have to assess it against the policies in the development plan. I hope that helps. Again, hopefully, if it wasn't clear from the case officer report, it's only come to you because the agent is member of staff. So this is something typically that we would make a decision normally in the office.
Thank you, Simon. Is that clear to everyone? Yep. Great. So who's next to speak? I'm looking. No, nobody wishes to comment. Edric, you wish to come back now and make a comment?
Yeah, I'll come back in. I wanted to see what a few other people said before I commented, but having looked at it, I would agree with my learned friend and colleague Tony, and also the officers. I can't see how we can go for this at the moment, so I will recommend we go in line with the officer's recommendation to refuse this.
Thank you. Do I consider that as a proposal?
This is a proposal, Chair.
And Tony, are you seconding? Yeah, thank you. Okay, one more chance. Does anybody wish to make any comments? Mick?
I'll just make an observation really, but if you're unable to put solar on a building, I would suggest you apply for ground mounted solar because it appears there might be some space and that might be viewed with approval. I don't know, but it's just a thought. The building itself may not be facing the right way, but I think you can do your own array on the ground.
We're all entitled to our thoughts, Mick, and there's no harm in sharing them. And so there we are. So, okay, we're going to go to the vote on this one. Now, I think at least one person was, or maybe two. I think Dawn was late arriving, so she didn't hear all of it. And Susie, I don't think you heard all of it. Did you?
Apparently I have to do that. No, I've obviously read it all before. You know, my view always is that we should, wherever possible, allow people to do what it is they want to do with their property. That's always my starting point, popular or not, as it may or not be. So I don't actually see what terrible problem this is going to cause anyone. And I don't like solar on the ground. That's my own personal view. I'd rather see it on a roof than on the ground, but there you go.
Okay, thank you, Susie, but I have to inform you, you won't be able to vote because you arrived after the conversation started, I'm afraid.
Thank you, Nick. I'm fully aware of that. That's absolutely fine.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so all those in favour of the officer recommendation for refusal, please. Any against? What? 2 against, and any abstentions? No abstentions. Okay, motion's carried. Thank you. So we move on to number 6, which is the big one of the day, I think. Land at Underhill Lane, Stone Easton, and that's in by Wells, obviously. So okay, let's go for it. Nikki, I think you have the pleasure.
Chair, think before the officer starts, I've just been asked to advise members, as I did last committee, about the tilted balance. We're in the situation, as we have been for some time, for housing applications, because we don't have a 5-year housing land supply in the east area of the district. It's deemed that our policies in the development plan are out of date. Therefore, the tilted balance in paragraph 11D of the NPPF applies, and that's saying that you should only be refusing applications if the adverse impacts of doing so would significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits. Now, normally, the test is you just apply your development plan policies and any other material considerations and come to a balance on those considerations. But here, because we're in the tilted balance situation, you should only be declining an application if the adverse impacts significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits of the development. So I've just asked you to bear that in mind when you make your determination. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Martin. I think that's very informative. Do all members understand exactly what Martin was saying? Okay, then we can continue. Nikki, up to you.
Chair. Good afternoon, all. Okay, so this is a resubmission of a previous application that was considered and refused by the committee in November of last year. Since that point, an appeal's been lodged, and the Planning Inspectorate has confirmed that that will be heard via a hearing. The date's to be confirmed. Obviously, if members decide to approve this application, then that appeal would not be necessary. There's been updated information and clarifications being submitted, particularly on schools and doctors, which was a concern raised at the previous committee. Another change is the air source heat pumps and solar panels have been proposed on each dwelling, which was discussed at the previous planning committee. So this is a joint application with Baines. So the access point and 2 existing houses are in Baines, and the proposed development would see 1 replacement house in Baines on that sort of access point, that blue chunk to the right, and 1 other replacement dwelling in Somerset with nomination rights to Baines, because they are existing social housing that need to be re-provided as part of the proposal. Okay, so the site is on the edge of Midsummer Norton. It was previously allocated as part of Local Plan Part 2, but that allocation has been removed, so it has no weighting in the assessment of the application, and it should be considered as an unallocated site in the countryside. As Martin suggested, that we need to consider the application in the tilted balance because we don't have a 5-year housing land supply. This plan was submitted with the application that shows the various services and facilities within walking distance to the site. And there's also a table that's come in with the application that sets out the walking distances and cycling distances from things like shops and schools and the doctors. I will get onto the doctors in a moment. This one shows the distance to schools within Midsummer Norton. So the blue ones are the primary schools and the green ones are the secondary schools. So there is predicted to be capacity in the primary schools and the early years. So future occupants are likely to be able to find a school place within close distance from the site. There are 8 predicted secondary school pupils to be generated by the development. So there are 2 senior schools close to the site in Midsummer Norton, but there may not be capacity for those, and projections suggest that there wouldn't be capacity for those. So in the event that pupils apply for places there, there are other options. So there's those two in Midsummer Norton. There's another school in Ritherlington, which is also in Baines, which is projected to have capacity. So that's about 3.5 miles from the site. And if they couldn't get into that school, then those, or some of those 8 pupils, their kind of catchment school would be the Blue School in Wells. And the developer has offered to make a contribution towards bus services. There is an existing bus service, and the developer has offered to contribute to sustain that. Additional information that's come forward since the application was considered at the last planning committee was about the doctor's surgery, which was a particular discussion point with members. Comments from the NHS at that time stated that the local GP surgery would be in Oak Hill, which is about 5.5 miles away. It's since been confirmed that the site is actually within the catchment for Somerton House, which is right where that white blob is, and the red blob is the application site. So it's right in the middle of Midsummer Norton. So it's a short distance away from the site. And their website confirms that that GP surgery is accepting new patients. So I'm going to go through a series of plans to give you a refresher on what's proposed. There aren't any design changes proposed other than the solar PV was proposed last time, but this time air source heat pumps are proposed on each dwelling as a consequence of the discussion from previously, but the actual design remains as per the previous application. We had some IT issues last time, so it looks like it's working okay. So I should be able to show you lots of photographs of the context, so you can see some of the reflections in the proposed designs and materials and layouts that will hopefully illustrate how my officer recommendation would be that that is an acceptable design that will support and enhance the local area. So here's the layout. Here's the street scenes. So I haven't put all the elevations and floor plans up, but this is a selection, and so we see different forms and materials. Again, you can refer back to the photographs when they come up. The officer report's got lots of information about the design, and obviously I'm happy to take questions about that. And I have this application has been subject to a design panel review and detailed, lengthy discussions with the applicant, and lots of changes with the applicant as a result of those discussions.
But when said, sorry, she didn't find you by the solution usually 6 weeks.
Bear with. Okay, so there are 2 apartment blocks buildings proposed, which would be 3 stories development, and there's examples of other 3-story development in the immediate street scene, which I'll show you photos for shortly. Story height plan here, just showing those 2 blocks. And garages, the vast majority of development would be 2-story. The landscape master plan shows an outward-facing development with the green on the edge. As I said, the design amendments that have come forward have included then the inclusion of a pocket park and also enhanced green spacing to the north of the site. Materials which would complement the local area, as hopefully you'll see in the photographs in a moment. Boundary treatments. Hard surfacing and furniture and play equipment dotted through the site, including in that pocket park, and then a pathway through the edge of the site. I missed one. Trees, the existing trees on the edges of the site are proposed to be maintained, and all the tree protection plan and ARB information has been reviewed and is considered acceptable. Off-site biodiversity net gain at 10% has been agreed and would be subject to a legal agreement. So that's just showing you the site there that's quite close to the application site. So that's been agreed with the county ecologists. This plan is showing a suite of crossing enhancement, so uncontrolled crossing points. So all the green arrows there showing you enhancement to the pedestrian network. Here's a list of the obligations. So these obligations were agreed as part of the previous application. There's been 2 changes to the proposed obligations in Baines. The numbers have just been reviewed and updated, and that's been agreed with officers in Baines and the applicant. In terms of update, while I'm talking about updates, there has been 1 new neighbour comment received since the committee report has been published, but that's not raising any new planning matters to be considered. The photographs, so this is the two existing units in Baines, which would be demolished to make way for the access point, and those occupants would be rehomed. And this is the proposed access point. So that's one of the new replacement houses in Baines. Some CGI images to show what the proposal would look like. Here's the existing site, trees on the boundaries, green field. Okay, so this one is showing the community hall to the south and the play area, existing 3-storey development, which includes a care home. The existing housing in the local area. So we've got terraced and semis, and we've got gable fronted dwellings, gable fronted bungalows, and a mixture of materials. So finally, put a summary of the issues that are recommended to be considered in the tilted balance. So as we discussed, it's not a flat balance, it's a tilted balance because we don't have a 5-year housing land supply. So the green ones are showing my officer recommendation of my weighting to be attributed to each of the benefits and harms. So the application is considered acceptable in the tilted balance. The harms are not considered significant and demonstrable to justify a refusal. And it's recommended for approval subject to a suite of planning conditions and a Section 106 agreement. Happy to take questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Nikki. I think Simon wishes to come in and make a comment.
Thank you, Nikki, for a very detailed presentation. I think members, when you're having your debate, that slide that you're looking at there is really important because as the decision-making body now, which you are, you will have to consider this application against the tilted balance. Martin's explained why. And we've set out there the weighting that we have given to each of the benefits and each of the harms. And as a result, we've concluded that there isn't any significant and or demonstrable harm that would outweigh the benefits. And that is the test in the NPPF. So that's led us to conclude to recommend to you that planning permission should be granted. There's just one other point, Chair, I want to make, and that is the location of this site and its proximity to other sites which this council has granted planning permission for. So you'll all remember the site at White Post. You'll know, those of you that are local, the relationship between White Post and this site. They are very close. The way in which school places and occupiers of that site the way in which those occupiers would gain school places would be no different to the arrangements that Nick has just outlined to you. And as a committee, when you were deciding that application, you decided that was acceptable. So again, just some things for you to bear in mind whilst you're having your debate. Obviously, we'll try and assist any questions, any queries you've got. And luckily, we've got Alison with us today, so she can provide any pearls of wisdom that she wants to add as well to your debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Simon. I think we're going to go on to the speakers now. We've got Deborah Plummer attending virtually, I believe.
Chair, Councillor Sean Hughes, if you can go first. Deborah's unfortunately not able to join the meeting. She's having technical troubles. And I've said I could read her speech. You could read it, but you haven't got your glasses on her behalf if it arrives in time. So if that's all right with you.
That'll work with me, no problem.
Thank you.
And so if we have, where have we? I've lost it now again. No, I haven't. No, I haven't. Peter Roberts.
Sean Hughes.
Oh, Sean. Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
Good afternoon. For those who don't know me, I'm Councillor Sean Hughes. I'm a councillor on Bath and North East Somerset Council and also Midsummer Norton Town Council. Okay, so it's frustrating. We're here again, and it's difficult to understand why. Curo state that this application is a duplicate of the original application that was refused by both Somerset and Baines councils in November. So what's changed since then? Well, a significant change is that the site is no longer part of Somerset's local plan and will not be included in the revised local plan. We're pleased to see that you're going to achieve the 505 houses without this site, so you don't actually need it. It's not part of Baines' local plan, so Baines don't want it. The residents don't want it. A High Court judge didn't even want it. So why has it come forward? Well, Curo claim this development is solving a housing crisis. However, Baines will be building more than 3,000 homes in our area, and about 900 or more than 900 of those will be social and affordable. You're going to build 505. The combination of that means that we'll be building between us over 1,000 social and affordable homes. So this unnecessary development is quite opportunistic. The claim that the site is now sustainable, well, claiming that residents can use GP surgeries in Midsummer Norton like St Chad's or Somerton House, these are both currently oversubscribed and our existing residents can get nothing but emergency appointments in the main. We regularly receive texts telling us that we not contact them unless it's an emergency. So that's clearly not true. With regard to the schools, the secondary schools, the Curo merely paying for buses to take children on a 22-mile round trip to Wells Blue School, again, is not sustainable. So this is all without even considering the serious issues to the wildlife, including various species of protected bats, deer, otters, that all occupy this piece of land. There are issues with building on a flood location, particularly at a time where we're seeing increased rainfall due to climate change. Demolition of two existing social houses. There are numerous access issues to the site, particularly around emergency vehicle access. There's also, you'll see in the report, talk about a TPO to put in WL lines to stop the existing residents being able to park outside their own houses to allow the new residents to get in. That sounds ridiculous to me. I'm most disappointed that a company like Curo, who are supposed to be working in partnership with us, are ignoring a democratic process and trying to aggressively take advantage of a 5-year land supply loophole. This isolated application is not part of the wider council-backed plan, therefore does not have the wider commitments to provide the much-needed support structure. Therefore, I sincerely hope that you will refuse this application or, as a minimum, defer it for a site visit. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. Martin, you wish to come in?
Thank you, Chair. Just picking up a couple of comments. When the previous application was considered by this committee, it had already been taken out of the plan as an allocated site. So the position hasn't changed since you considered it last. And secondly, the High Court judge gave no judgment on the merits of this site. The reason it was taken out together with other sites was due to a legal technicality in terms of the way that the local plan part 2 was dealt with. There were no comments about the planning merits of this site or not in that litigation. Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Martin. So we now move on to who I was going to have just now. Peter Roberts, unless Helen, you have got something come through for you to read out?
Nothing yet, but if it arrives after Mr. Roberts is
Okay, then. So Mr. Roberts is next. Please. Mr. Roberts, you have 3 minutes, okay? Maybe a little bit longer because I think that chat took a little bit longer than 3 minutes.
Thank you, sir. Good afternoon. As has been set out, a similar application was refused permission in November for one sole reason: the proximity to services and facilities, and in particular to senior schools and doctors' surgeries. However, at that point in time, members did not have all relevant information before them. As your officer has set out, firstly, all key facilities such as shops, bus stops, primary schools, etc., are well within acceptable walking distances as defined by national guidance. Secondly, with respect to doctors, the site falls in the practice area boundary of the newly formed Summer Valley Medical Group, which is accepting new patients and has 2 surgeries in Midsummer Norton and 1 in Chilcompton. This means that future residents wouldn't have to travel to Oak Hill Surgery, as was previously thought. Thirdly, with respect to senior schools, the council's own forecast predicts the development to generate only 8 additional secondary school-aged pupils. As such, whilst there is limited capacity in Midsummer Norton secondary schools, the number of pupils needing to be accommodated or having to travel is small. The council and inspectors have approved several recent developments where secondary school-aged pupils would likely need to travel to school by bus. This includes applications at White Post, Colford, and more recently, Butley. Fundamentally, it is common practice for senior school pupils to travel to school by bus, and this should not be used as a reason for refusal. Furthermore, through this new application, Curo has taken the opportunity to enhance the sustainability of homes. They would be highly thermally efficient, have air source heat pumps and solar panels, and achieve a significant reduction of over 70% of carbon emissions compared with current building regulations. Despite what Councillor Hughes suggests, this application has been closely scrutinised by Somerset and Baines officers, and none of them can find any technical justification for refusal. We appreciate that there is opposition to this scheme from some Baines residents, but Baines themselves are now proposing significant growth nearby at Farrington Gurney and Radstock. They therefore recognise the sustainability of this location, and whilst Baines refused the previous application, officers have confirmed that if Somerset were to grant permission and agree a Section 106, their objections would also fall away. Whilst the site lies on the boundary, it is one of the most sustainable locations for development in East Somerset, with a far greater range of services and facilities nearby than many other options, including the scheme that members approved recently in Butley. Curo has submitted an appeal against the previous refusal, but I can confirm that we would withdraw that appeal if we got permission. This is not intended as a means to force the council into granting permission, but a valid challenge to elements of the application that were previously unconsidered. This is an opportunity to revisit the application without either Curo as a not-for-profit organisation or the council incurring the significant expense of appeal. In addition, approving this application would help address the acute housing shortage in Somerset East, which includes over 2,000 households on the affordable housing waiting list. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. And Helen, can you, has it arrived? Do you wish to read out?
I haven't got it. I'm
You haven't
afraid,
got it?
so we'll have to
Okay.
carry on without. I'm
Right,
afraid.
that's scrap then. We won't be bothering with that. Okay, next we go to the division councillor. So Edric, you're first.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Nikki, for your presentation. I lost the words there. Makes a change for me, doesn't it? I'm far happier with this application now, having had the updated presentation to us. I think it's addressed the concerns. I was one of the ones who voted against this last time, and I think my concerns have been addressed. So currently, depending on what other people say, I'm quite happy with this now. My concerns were around the distance people are going to travel, particularly to doctors' surgeries, etc., as I highlighted a few months ago. So currently, I'm happier that it's been addressed, and also to do with the heat pumps, etc. So I'm sure, again, looking at my green friends, I'm sure Mick and others will be happy with the green issues being somewhat addressed. I'm sure they want more, but it's looking much better than it did back in, was it November we looked at this? So thank you very much.
Right, thank you, Edric. Tony.
Thank you, Chair. Although at first I'd rather thought that I had a gun put to my head. If you don't pass this, we've started an appeal anyway. Having listened to the officer with brilliant presentation, I too think this has changed significantly since we looked at it last time. And as I've said before, I can see no reason to depart from the officer's recommendation.
Yeah, oh, I've got it now. It's working again now. Benty, you're next, please. And Adam afterwards, okay?
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I want to ask a question. The trees, you mentioned the one word maintenance. Who is going to provide the maintenance? Which council? And who and how often are you going to maintain them? How big are these trees going to grow? Because there is nothing worse than having trees growing into houses, into pavements, and all the rest of it. So if it is the council, Somerset Council, that are going to do that, then it's the taxpayers in Somerset that's got to pay for all the roadworks, etc. So I would like to know that, because trees and houses, I don't really like when we're talking about flats. I don't like 3-story high buildings either. I actually don't like that all those houses, flats are being built in a beautiful green area. And when you are mentioning the wildlife, then I don't like it even more if it is absolutely possible for me. Regarding the doctor surgery, can I just say I'm on the patient group in one of the Shepton's surgeries, and there's not a single surgery in the areas that are not bombarded with patients and has got a waiting list as long and will not see you when you come to their door or whatever. So I doubt very much that in Midsomer Norton, this should be different than in Shepton Mallet and all the other places. So please, if I could be told something about the trees.
No, yeah, it's gone green again. Okay, who would like to answer Benty's query?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm happy to respond to that. The site would be managed by a management company, so the proposed section 106 would include management and maintenance arrangements for the site in perpetuity. So we are careful with working with our highways colleagues that we avoid trees that are going to interfere with the highway. So that is an issue that's scrutinised when sites are looked at for adoption of the highway. So that's not considered to be problematic in this case. So ongoing maintenance would be managed and paid for by the management company, which would have a minor kind of annual charge. I'll stop there.
Yeah, I just want to say the management company, who appoints the management company, and when can they wash their hands and walk away from it? And when will it become Somerset Council's responsibility? Because it will happen, and I don't know. I just feel very unhappy with this here. It will happen, and then all of a sudden we are going to start paying for it, or look at something that goes into disrepair.
Okay, I think Martin, you'd like to come in on this one?
Yes, thank you, Chair. The Section 106 agreement will require initially the developer to submit details of the management company and establish the management company. That management company will then take ownership of the public open spaces, and that will be in perpetuity. That will continue forever. And the residents of the development will pay, as Nikki mentioned, a charge to that management company to maintain their areas. So it would, on that basis, it would never come to the council because it'd be dealt with by the company.
Okay, thank you, Benji. I hope that answers your questions. Yeah, we put you down, Martin, but first is Adam.
Thank you, Chair. Hi, there's two questions ready for officers. Could this development go ahead without Baines Council giving it permission as well? I understand that part of the site is in their territory, and previously they have refused that, and one of their councillors has spoken here against it. So I'm kind of wary about imposing a development on an adjacent council that without their agreement, really. But the applicant in his discussion said that if we gave it permission today, then Baines officers would also withdraw their objection. And why is that? Is it because of social housing provision? Could be through attended to through a Section 106. And my second question is, if the applicants have addressed the previous reason for refusal, the only one we used last year, is it, as I understand it, not really possible to identify any other ones at this time? So could you clarify that? Thank you.
Thank you, Nick.
Yes, thank you. The previous application, because it was refused by Somerset Planning Committee, there was no sort of need for the access way. So that was then put through for refusal as well. There's case law that we refer to as the bridge to nowhere. So there was an application for a bridge that didn't need to be built because there was nothing that it was going to. So that's the kind of case law that was referred to in that case. That access wasn't needed because the substantive part of the site, the dwellings, or all but one of the dwellings, had been refused. So that was the sort of the background on the previous application. With the resubmission, if the Somerset Planning Committee is minded to approve the application, then I understand that officers in Baines would recommend approval, but that would then trigger a Baines committee decision. So obviously we don't know the outcome of that. In the event that the committee refused that application, then it's likely that would go to appeal, and then that would then be subject to another review by the planning inspectorate. Thank you.
Thank you. So
thanks, Nikki. I think Simon wishes to come in.
Just to sort of add on to what Nikki said, if you look at the report pack, there's condition 3, which effectively is a Grampian style condition, which states that if access cannot be provided, i.e. through the Baines territory and via the Baines application, then effectively you would not be able to deliver the development that was approved by the permission if that's a recommendation that you take today. So it's built into our recommendation. In terms of your other question, I think it would be considered unreasonable if you start to identify other reasons for refusal today, because clearly you had the opportunity to do that when you first looked at the application.
Thank you, Simon. Are you happy, Adam?
Thank you. Yes, and one follow-up question. Is it,
Yeah, okay.
is it something that we have to determine today? Is there any possible, we to defer this for any good reason at all?
There's no reason for you not to make a decision. Our recommendation to you is that you should approve it. Clearly, that's the discussion, the debate you're having now.
Okay, thank you for that. Yep, nothing to go. Right, next one is Martin D.
Yeah, well, thank you for calling it. Actually, Adam's asked the questions really that I was going to ask. It's been unfortunate that the infrastructure impact is going to be out of our remit. It's going to be on Midsummer Norton, and I do take what the councillor from the area from Baines actually said about that. But I think I am sort of, so to get this right, the only bit of Baines that's in this application is the two houses. Is it two houses that obstruct the access, and that they would have to give planning permission to demolish those houses? So in theory, if we pass this today, it would go back to Baines and they could stop the whole thing.
Yes, Nick or Simon, whichever one of you'd like to confirm.
Thank you. In the event that sorry, engagement brain. If Somerset approve the application, sorry, my brain's not working. Yeah, do you want to go?
So effectively, Somerset Council would be asked to consider the application that's within our district. So we're recommending approval. There's the condition 3 of the decision notice, which effectively says that the development shall not take place, i.e. the development that Somerset approve shall not take place until it's been demonstrated and agreed in writing with the LPA at Somerset Council that planning permission has been granted for the site access. So effectively, if as a board you take the decision to go with the officer recommendation, approve the application, there'll be a period of time whilst the Section 106 agreement is worked up, and at that point in time, this council will then issue the decision for approval. At the same time, Baines will consider the application that has been submitted to them for the access again, and they will take a decision.
And sorry, supplementary. So assuming that happens in that scenario, any appeal that follows would be the problem of Baines rather than Somerset.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. Nick, yeah.
Sorry, thank you. I just wanted to add, I've engaged my brain now. In the event that the access in Baines was refused and an appeal was dismissed, there would be no access to the site. So the application, the proposal here today couldn't be implemented.
Thank you for that. I think, Martin, you've got that. Yeah, I sort of worked that one out before. Yeah, thank you. Next is Mick Dunk.
Susie on here.
No, it's Mick.
Sorry, have I gone?
Mick, you're next.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that sounds very confusing, really, because you wonder who would turn it down and who would be incurring costs if there was an appeal. But I'll leave that one for a minute. I just wanted to reassure myself that the Summer Valley Medical Group were really able to take the people that are then resident in this 54 houses. We've had a representation from a councillor from Baines who says they will only offer emergency treatment. And I'm a bit concerned that we need a positive response from that medical group to say that they will take every patient from this development. And I don't know if we've got that, have we? That's my first question. I've got a couple of others as well.
Okay, if someone would like to answer that one to start with, then we'll come back to you, Mick, afterwards, okay?
Councillor Dunk, if you remember the presentation that Nikki gave, she showed you the screenshot from the medical group that was obviously confirming that it's taking patients. So again, we can't give you more of a guarantee than that. But again, we've explained to you the availability of GP surgery services that are available. And clearly, you're being told, we're being told that there's availability at the surgery that Nick has specified. And again, we do have this discussion a lot, and we were talking about it obviously in the meeting before this. And again, there is a responsibility of the operating group to make sure that they have got the staff to provide the services that the general community need. It's not all down to us as planning authorities and you as members sitting on a planning committee to guarantee that. But the message you're being given is that, yes, they are taking new patients.
Okay, thank you for that, Simon.
I did say I'd have a couple of extra questions. I mean, that hasn't really put my mind at risk because I can still envisage people turning up and saying, you can't have an appointment, emergencies only. That doesn't make me very happy.
Okay, Mick, you got a question?
Yeah, I have.
Put it out, mate.
It's to do with the capacity, because you've got solar and air source heat pumps and presumably car charging points as well. But have you checked with the district network operator that they can supply the electricity required for that many houses in that position?
Yeah, we're advised by the agent that they've checked and that there is sufficient capacity.
And it's solar on all houses. And I don't know, because I'm always a bit concerned about what they specify as a suitable solar array on a house. There must be some regulation, perhaps not actually, that says that you must have something like a 3 kilowatt system minimum on a 4-bedroom or 3-bedroom house. So that's the sort of reassurance I want from that.
Okay, who wishes to? Yes, okay, Nick.
The applicants put in an updated sustainability statement and agreed to 70% enhancement on building regs. So that's how we'd kind of quantify that. So that would be reviewed as part of a condition discharge, so the houses couldn't be occupied until we can show that there's air source heat pumps and a solar panel and this 70% on across the whole site.
Okay, so that's 70% up on what the present regulations are, and they can achieve that whichever way they like.
To include air source heat pumps and solar panels and
okay, thanks very much.
In their building techniques.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Nick. Mick, are you happy? Oh, you're never happy, but okay. Cheers. Susie, your turn.
I think, I remember this whole discussion very clearly last time. I actually voted in favour last time. I thought it was a shame that we didn't allow this to go through last time. I think the situation with the NHS and medical centres, like we all know the situation, this is no different than anywhere else, unfortunately. And they're saying that they are taking on new patients. We have to accept that at face value. We all know what it's like when you phone up to get a doctor's appointment. I'm really pleased that they're putting in air source heat pumps. I prefer those to other things that are available, such as solar panels. The question I'd like to ask is that they've said they're going to put some funding towards transporting students to Wells Blue. Is there a little bit more detail on that? Is that a lump sum? Is that a one-off payment? What is that?
Okay, Nick. Yep.
Yeah, it's a one-off payment to go to the Somerset Council for bus services.
So how are we working out that that is a sum that's a realistic sum to make a difference towards transporting children for how long into the future back and forward to the school if it's just a lump sum?
It's a contribution that was put forward by the education officers. So it covers for 5 years to cover those 8 children. As discussed, it might not be as many as 8 because there's 3 other options that they could look at before they got to that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for that, Susie. Martin L.
Thank you, Chair, my question's been answered. It was to do with liability for Somerset Council in the event of an appeal. That has been answered. Thank you.
Okay, that one was answered. And all right, we go to Barry next.
Thank you, Chair. When we voted against this in November, one of the issues was access from the main road. There was questions raised about service vehicles being able to get around the site when cars are probably parked all over the place. And there were mentions of children's being bused down to Wells Blue School because there wasn't sufficient capacity in Baines. How does putting heat source pumps, air source heat pumps and solar panels on roofs change any of those issues to make this suddenly a very presentable scheme? Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Barry. Is there anybody who wishes to take that one?
I'll take that one, Chair. I think the report back, Councillor Clark, and the explanation that Nick has provided in a presentation and some of the answers that we've given to some of the other councillors' questions have, as, if you like, provided you as a group with that lack of information that you had before. So hopefully you will also agree. But clearly, we've talked about how access to secondary school places will be provided and how potential pupil demand from this development will be managed. Talked about access to GP services. We've talked about the benefit of improving the sustainability profile of the dwellings. Obviously, they're not linked to those other points, but it's just information that is available for you now that wasn't available for you before. In terms of access to the site, you've heard that the access will be basically using the plot area of 2 existing houses, and you've heard that they're within the Baines catchment area. You've heard that those houses will be replaced, one actually directly on the site next to the highway, the new highway, and one elsewhere in the development. We've got Emma from the Highway Authority, who, if you want to add anything about management of traffic on the estate, Emma, hopefully that will help Councillor Clark with that question.
Would you like to make a comment, Emma?
Certainly. I think there's a couple of points that Councillor Clark possibly has outstanding that haven't been covered yet, as far as I might be able to help. Access into the site. The applicant has provided what are called swept path analysis drawings, which show the most reasonably associated largest vehicle and how it can access a site. Normally that's a refuse vehicle. The swept path drawings as provided are perfectly adequate. In fact, actually they provided a swept path drawing for an 11.2 metre long refuse vehicle. Somerset standards are 10.4. So if an 11.2 metre long vehicle can do it, a 10.4 definitely can. With regards to vehicles being parked internally on the access roads, etc., the parking levels within this proposal are accepted, and therefore we have to assume that there will be no parking on the highway. There is no right to park on a public highway, so therefore we can assume that that will be kept clear for the access for refuse vehicles. As I say, that's the most reasonably associated largest vehicle, and that's only on a 3 weekly basis.
Thank you very much. Cheers. That clears up. Benty, I think you would like to have a input.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. It was just, if I heard right, please correct me. You said 8 children that are going to be transported by bus from a private company to and from school. Was that what you said? 8 children?
The proposal is predicted to generate 8 secondary school pupils. So those 8 secondary school pupils might look to go to 2 of the secondary schools in Midsummer Norton, in which case they can walk, or they might go to a bus at Withlington, or they might go on a Somerset Council bus to Wells Blue, or some of them.
The transportation for school children to other areas is very expensive, and Somerset has got several private buses going around or taxis going around that are transporting children to other schools as far from Wincanton to Shepton Mallet. So I think it is an expense that is going to hit Somerset Council, and yeah, I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you for your contribution there, Benty. Edric, did you want to say something?
Yeah, let's clarify, Nicky. So they'd be on a Somerset provided bus, not the 173, which runs from Midsummer Norton to Wells. So are they putting funding into a public service bus which runs? So basically paying for the kids' permits rather than on a privately funded bus? Just to clarify what Councillor Heights raised. I've always assumed they just walk into town and get the 173 which goes to Wells. Is that not correct?
I would have to check with education officers. I had
Okay,
understood it was a school bus, a Somerset Council provided school bus that they were contributing towards, but I'd have to check to be sure.
I think just again, in terms of considering the application, Vice Chair, what you've got to consider is that this change in the pattern of land use on the site would generate a need for 8 secondary school pupil places. You've heard from Nikki where the potential options are. It's a really good thing, I think, that the applicant has agreed to make a contribution towards paying the travel costs if they end up having to travel to the secondary school in Somerset, which, as we've heard, is just one of 4 options.
Thank you, Simon. Dawn, I think you're first. Don't tell me you've got a dodgy microphone as well.
Go. Woo, hello.
I often think that when you have children, you choose a home where the access for the school is relevant to you. And if there is no access, you don't choose to live there. It's that simple.
Thank you for that. Yeah, words of wisdom. Susie, did you wish to come back
I
with
was going
something
to
else?
propose that we go with officer recommendations.
Okay, you're proposing, Edric?
I was going to do the same thing, so I'm happy to second that, Susie. Okay.
Nick, Chair.
Yes.
I've had the email from the lady that wants to object. It's up to yourself if you will accept me to read it out now. Or what the legal advisor thinks. It's not that long.
Legal advice on that one, I think. Martin?
Chair, it's ultimately your discretion. It's after the public speaking session and it's technically closed, but the lady had difficulty in joining. So my view, Chair, if you wanted to accept it and hear it before you go to the vote, then that would be perhaps fair.
Okay, I think I will accept it. You read it, Helen, and then we'll go straight to the vote. There'll be no debating on this lady's email. Thank you. So if you could do that, Helen.
It's not very long. So this is Deborah Plummer, who has said, I'd like to object to the proposed Underhill Lane Curo development. Firstly, I don't understand why this is still being put forward, considering it has been removed by a High Court judge. This development will not benefit Midsummer Norton in any way. I recently tried to discuss this development with Curo, but they couldn't find any of my questions, then refused to speak to me further. Not very professional. Reading online the problems people have dealing with Curo regarding antisocial behaviour, this behaviour doesn't really fill me with confidence. If we need more housing in our area, it's up to Baines to sort out where all the council tax will be for Baines. Midsummer Norton is already stretched regarding schools, doctors, dentists, etc. As for our roads, it's chaos, and the roads leading to this proposed development already have vehicles parked both sides, so access is already tight. The proposed access to this site means primary school aged children will no longer have a safe direct route to their school. There is some beautiful wildlife that used the proposed site. It will be sad to lose it. At the last planning meeting, when this development was refused, Curo said they would contribute to local healthcare. Oak Hill Surgery is not local for Midsummer Norton. At a local town council meeting last year, it was said Curo would give each house a voucher to get a bike from Halfords. Halfords in Trowbridge, though. How is that benefiting our local Halfords? This development just isn't right for this location. Somerset Council, please stop building on our border. You take the council tax, but it is us in Midsummer Norton who suffers with our already stretched infrastructure.
Thank you, Helen. I think most members will realise that that's been noted that we've taken it on board and that most of those questions have been answered, I believe, in the debate. So we're going to move on now.
Before we go to the vote, Mike did want to speak, possibly the last person.
All right, Mike, you're pushing it, but we will let you speak.
Thank you, Chair. It's just to clarify that the 10% biodiversity gain is normally recommended to be on the site where the development is proposed. But I note that it's being put in what you might almost call adjacent sites. They're not quite adjacent, I don't think. And so that's one thing to note. The other thing is who's responsible for maintaining those sites financially and physically?
Okay, this is the last question. So who is going to answer this one?
Thank you. There's a preference to put BNG on the site, but as an alternative, off-site is acceptable in policy terms if it's nearby and will service the site. That's been agreed with the ecologists. This was proposed before the 10% BNG was a national requirement, so it was always put forward by the applicant to meet that 10% requirement. So that's been accepted by the county ecologist. It's covered in the legal agreement, so all the ongoing maintenance and management arrangements are the responsibility of the developer to maintain, and that's all controlled by legal agreement. Thank you.
I'm assuming.
One question, I said, Mick. Okay.
I just thought the residents might be allowed access to the site they're paying for.
Do you want to give him a quick answer if there is one?
It's a biodiversity net gain rather than like a public access, public open space contribution. So that's not part of that sort of assessment, but the on-site public open space has been assessed and considered in line with policy and acceptable.
Okay, that part of the debate is closed. Okay, we're going to go to the vote now. So all those in favour of the officer recommendation to approve as proposed by Susie, was it? Yeah, and seconded by Edric. All in favour, please.
7.
7 in favour. All against?
Sorry, Chair. Can we just do this again?
Okay, we'll do it again. All those in favour?
8.
8. All those against?
4.
And any abstentions? No. So that's carried. Thank you. So that's good. Cheers. Okay, we move on to the next one now, which is number 7 on your agenda. And that is going to be presented by Ed. And it's the Laurels at Westfields Lane, Draycott, Cheddar in Somerset. And carry on, Ed.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, so this is a full planning application for the replacement of an existing 21-bed residential care home and adjoining land with a new 49-bed care home and associated communal support staff and associated works. And it's a resubmission of an application that we had in last year, referenced on the screen. So this is an aerial from Google Maps, and the red area shown on the screen shows the full sites. That includes the paddock to the back of the application site. This shows the location there. So you've got the Laurels shown in a slightly greener colour with the existing building towards the southwest of the site. This slide also shows you allocation DR1, which is an allocation from local plan part 2, and that's shown in the light yellow. So what you're looking at there is that this application site sits within that DR1 allocation in local plan part 2, and the allocation is for up to 33 dwellings, so normal housing rather than a care home. And so this application is essentially a departure from the local plan in that it doesn't accord with the specific requirements of policy DR1, because DR1 is for 33 normal dwellings and there's no mention of care home accommodation. So that's just for you to note at this point. Just the location again, a bit more zoomed in. So we've got the site there shown with a red wash over it. So the existing care home at the bottom and then the paddock at the back. The access, or the main access, to the existing and proposed is off Westfield Lane to the sort of southwestern entrance. You can also see at the top right of the site, there's a kind of existing rear access. So that would also be used for, as you'll see in later images, some sort of staff overflow car parking to the rear. This is some relevant planning history, which is actually on the site next door. So there's extant planning permission for a single dwelling on that site that's sort of out the back of Little Paddock, which is the bungalow next to the Laurels. So just going back so you can locate that. That's the sort of paddock just to the southeast there. So that's now got planning permission for a single dwelling. So that's, again, just some relevant planning history that was granted December 2023. And then just zooming back out to show where we are in terms of the settlement limits. This site is within the settlement limits of Draycott. We're sort of obviously towards the western part of the village. And this site shows the general topography of the site. So we've got the existing Laurels care home on the sort of bottom image. So this site slopes downwards slightly from the north to the south. And here is an image of the front of the existing care home. That's taken from standing in the vehicular access point, and you can see the existing car parking arrangement there, which has capacity of 9 to 10 car parking spaces. And this is an image looking at the paddock, existing paddock at the back, looking up towards the Mendip Hills. You can just make out the existing rear access kind of to the right at the back of the site there. And that's another image showing you the rear access as existing. So the gate on the right accesses the paddock at the back of the Laurels. And this image is just back towards the Laurels from within the paddock. And this shows you Westfield Lane. So again, where you would access the site from the front, looking southeastwards, so back towards the centre of the village. This image is in the other direction along Westfield Lane, away from the village. And this image is, this slide shows a few images taken from up on Draycott Slates or up on the Mendips. And highlighted for you there, you can see the sites on those 3 images. So the right-hand side image is sort of from the perspective of the viewer, that's the rightmost image, and then the center, they've sort of moved left a bit, and then the left one, they've moved left a bit more. So that's just to kind of give you an idea of how the site looks from when if you were standing up on the Mendips, essentially. Okay, so this is a proposed site plan, and what you can see there is the access as proposed would be relocated from the sort of corner of the site where it is existing to be placed more centrally, and you would then have 17 car parking spaces at the front, and that would include 3 disabled bays and 1 electric car parking space. You've then got the kind of main development form, which is arranged in 4 sort of volumes, if you like, and they're all connected by these kind of linking elements. And then towards the back of the site in the green area, that shows you the 8 further car parking spaces, which would be for staff only. So this site's just to sort of illustrate the finished heights of the ridges. So obviously across the top there it says 36.65 AOD, so that's 36.65 meters above sea level, and that's just to illustrate that the way the building is designed is it sort of obviously the site rises, but the finished heights of the ridges don't rise. So as the site goes back, it's essentially sort of built into the land, if you like. So it diminishes as you go further back, and then the image below shows the relationship of the proposed to the immediate neighbours. So on the left is Lower Westfield House, so its existing ridge height is 35.15. The proposed is 36.65, so 1.5 meters taller there. Obviously it's hipped, and as I mentioned, this submission is a resubmission. The previous submission didn't include a hipped roof, so the idea behind the hipping of that roof is to remove some of the sort of bulk from the edge of the site to reduce any kind of overbearing impact. And then to the right hand side, that is the bungalow little paddock, 32.2, so it's obviously significantly taller than that building being a bungalow. Again, that roof there is hipped across. In terms of the materials, I've just highlighted the main materials. So natural rubble stone would be the main finish cladding on the front element, plus a bit of cedar cladding between the 2 main windows. And then again on the element furthest forward, the main material would be rubble stone, and then you get more sort of cedar cladding as you go back, and grey tile will be the main material to the roof. So this slide just again shows you those same elevations, but from the other side. And just the roof plan there. So you've got some solar shown on the parts labelled 4, and again grey. So grey, mainly grey roof tiles, and then metal sort of standing seam for that rear single-story element at the back. This is just a ground floor plan. So the pink areas, the bedrooms, green areas, obviously the sort of corridor areas, and the yellow, you've got a couple of lounge areas plus reception right at the front. And then the blue areas are more kind of staff, kitchen, ancillary type accommodation, and a similar arrangement on the first floor. So it's a contemporary, it provides modern level facilities, whereas the existing, if you know the site, is a lot more kind of higgledy-piggledy, if you like. Finally there, that's just a CGI of the proposed from the front. Finally, so this is just a summary of the officer recommendation. So again, as with the previous application, this is a situation where the tilted balance is engaged, because we're still talking about housing here, even though it's a different type of housing. So again, the test is, do the harms significantly and demonstrably outweigh the benefits? Those are the benefits as identified by officers, and the levels of weight that have been attributed to those. And you may agree, you may disagree with those, but the test there is the same as with the previous application. And that's it from me. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ed. Very informative. Okay, we move on next to Mr. Domford Roberts, please. You have 3 minutes.
Good afternoon. I'm here to right a couple of wrongs. First, the officer's report to you states that the only significant benefit is 28 additional bed spaces. Policy DP14 states that proposals for care homes that meet an identified local need will be permitted. The Planning Authority's own internal planning policy team said initially, evidence would need to be submitted to demonstrate an identified local need for the larger facility. Therefore, an identified local need must be met or demonstrated. It clearly has not. The application itself contains no evidence of an identified local need for the extra bed spaces. The officer's report states that the 2016 Strategic Market Assessment document identifies a need for 42 bed spaces a year in Mendip, and that the 28 additional bed spaces proposed make an important contribution to that need. But that's not correct. What the 2016 assessment actually does is to specify what it calls the potential need for 42 residential bed spaces a year for Mendip. So potential. And it also says it may be the case that an increase in the number of bed spaces would not be required. So with respect, a qualified potential figure in a 2016 document is not a demonstration of an identified local need. And therefore, the 28 bed spaces cannot properly be called a significant benefit, in my view. Second, policy DP7 requires new development to be of a scale, mass, form and layout appropriate to the local context. The officer's report to you says the proposed development is considered to represent a fairly high land take of the site, i.e. much of the site would be developed, when compared to other residential properties within the immediate area, which tend to be detached properties in generous plots, so hardly appropriate to the local context, in my view. You can see yourselves from the plan submitted the stark difference in scale, mass, form and layout between the proposed buildings and the local context. There is no hiding a huge structure crammed onto the site. I appreciate and understand and don't object in principle to the desire for a better care home here on this site, but this is just too much. So the planning balance section in the officer's report is out of kilter, in my view, because A, I've demonstrated the fundamental flaw in the significant benefit claim. B, the two moderate benefits claimed are that it will look better than what's there at the moment and may provide some sustainability improvement, but they don't address the principle whether it should be there in the first place at all. And the limited benefit claimed is that it will provide jobs, but the officer in his report admits that no evidence has been provided to quantify this. I submit, therefore, that the harms outweigh the benefits, and therefore, in the words of Flower of Scotland, please send the applicant homeward to think again. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your comments. We have Councillor Ros White, but we're not sure if she's online at the moment. Can we see if she's there, Helen?
Councillor Wyke is not online.
Okay, if she does come online in the time while we're debating, we'll come back for her comments. Okay?
Thank you.
Thank you. So next we go to Tom Sadler.
Thanks, Chair. Afternoon, committee.
Welcome. You've got 3 minutes. Okay.
Okay, thank you.
Cheers.
I'm the planning agent acting on behalf of the applicant Country Court Care Limited, who own and operate the existing care home at the Laurels in Draycott. The existing care home comprises a converted residential dwelling that's been altered and extended beyond its life over numerous occasions over the years to try and adapt to and accommodate both a significant increase in demand for bed spaces, as well as respond to modern regulatory and safety requirements for a care home facility. The care home is no longer fit for purpose, with room sizes well below current standards, as well as general amenities and standards falling well short for both occupants and, importantly, the staff as well. There is therefore a significant need in the local community for the proposed new replacement care home facility, which will provide high quality accommodation, communal space and staff facilities. As highlighted by the application's planning officer, the council have an identified need for over 40 care home bed spaces per year up to 2039. This proposal will provide an additional 28 bedrooms on site, all of which will be fit for purpose both now and well into the future. The principle of this development is accepted by the council's officers, and there are no objections from the technical consultees, including design, highways and ecology. Despite already proposing a number of car parking spaces which meet and exceed the council's requirements, noting the Highways Department have concluded the development is acceptable on all transport and parking terms, we have further responded to the parish council's concerns regarding car parking capacity by creating the additional 8 spaces to the rear of the site for the staff. This will include dedicated disabled spaces, which, it's worth noting, are not currently available at the existing facility. It is absolutely essential that new care home bed spaces are provided both within the local area of Draycott, but across the council's administrative area, and the replacement of this existing poor quality facility with a high quality care home will result in a multitude of significant benefits and extremely limited, if not no harm whatsoever. I therefore strongly urge you to follow officer's recommendation and approve this application without delay. Thank you.
And thank you very much. Cheers for your contribution. Now, normally we would move on to the local councillors, but I don't believe Councillor Wyke is yet online, or I don't even believe Councillor Shearer is online either. Am I right or wrong? I'm
Not
correct,
online,
am I?
you're online.
Okay, so we're going to open it up to the people on the committee straight away. So who would like to be first with a comment? Oh, Mick, yeah. Okay, mate.
Yeah, I'm just confusing. I'm looking at the plan and you've got staff parking at the rear and you've got grey, which demonstrates tarmac. But I can't see how you access the rear. For me, it stops at a certain point and there's no continuation of a hard surface driveway to the rear to access these staff parking spaces. Is the drawing in need of being upgraded, or it's on? I think it's on the landscaping drawing. Seems to show.
So that's how it looks from outside the site. And then in terms of the site plan probably shows you best.
So is there vehicular access from the rear then? I thought it was just pedestrian.
No, that was for staff overflow parking as well. So there's 8 staff overflow spaces at the rear.
So they can access that.
Yeah.
Okay.
But the main, obviously, for visitors and deliveries, whatever, is from the front off Westfield Lane. So this is just an overflow car park for staff only.
Well, that would explain why there is no through road.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Mick, for that. And thank you, Ed, for your answer. Who's next? Martin L.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking through the documents, I can't, obviously, access to, I did look at it, the access from the north side is through a secluded close, very residential. Has any, I can't see any representation about increased traffic at all times of day and night, covering patterns into those 8 spaces through that gate. But I'm just checking, has anything been received? Because it might be a concern, but if nothing's been raised, I'm going to trouble anybody on it. Thank you.
Well, no, very good query. I've seen it, yeah. Is there anybody else who would wish to make a comment? Yeah, Ed, you would like to come back?
Thank you, Chair. Just to say, we've received comments from Highways that they've got no objections. So that's that would, I would say, would be the main source we would receive an objection for in that respect. We haven't.
Thank you, Ed. Emma, as you're here, you we might as well make use of you.
And why not? No, with regards to the 8 parking spaces at the rear, I'm presuming those are the ones that you're referring to as the 8 at the rear. Yes, they will be coming and going, and yes, it will be a shift pattern, but it's very unlikely that all 8 will arrive or leave at the same time. Working on the principle that, say, 6 of them do, that can't be considered severe.
Thank you. Martin, are you happy with that? Yep. Okay.
Happy with that.
Emma. Right, who else would like to speak? Barry.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair. Can I go back to the plans of the 4 buildings on the site, please, Ed? No, not the elevations, the actual ground. Yes, that one. But there are some green spaces that all look very institutionalized with nowhere for the residents to go outside. There are some little green patches, which I presume are seating areas or something for them. Okay, all right, thank you.
I can add something more if you want. Yeah, just in terms of public open space, there is a kind of standard within the plan, and it meets that standard. So that's within the report back as well.
Thank you, Ed. And Edric, you'd like to say something?
Yeah, it's around the parking again. Says what, 49 beds, 8 class spaces at the back, 17 at the front, and the access roads are quite small and narrow. Is there enough parking for medical people to services? I'm aware my father's currently in a dementia unit. My mum might be in one in a year or so, and they sort of seem to need lots of medical intervention. Are there enough parking spaces? I know this is a totally different thing to do with that place in Wells, which is for people to just go live in before they get to this stage of life. But it seems to be lots of these places are trying to sort of jam people in with very limited parking. And I know Draken quite well. And I listened to the chap who spoke in objection. The lanes are very narrow. And the other thing is, if this does go through, 1 electric parking point. Come on, you can do better than that, guys. There should be way more than 1 electric parking point at the front. But I have concerns around the level of parking. It's a case of, and it does look like we've jammed 4 buildings on and put a little bit of parking on as an afterthought. I think it's probably too big, and one of those buildings should go. I think there's overdevelopment at the site. I would be happy to see something maybe 2/3 the size on that, but I'm not happy with it as it stands.
Thank you, Edric. Well, Ed, would you like to come back on that, please?
Yep, thank you, Chair. Just on the parking level point, so you'll find in the officer report on highways and parking, according to the parking standards, this level of development would require 14.2 car parking spaces. And as you can see, we've got 25 proposed there. So that's obviously a significant over provision. And that was deliberate, essentially, because this application has received a lot of objection, both from the parish and members of the public, neighbours, that parking is an issue. So the applicant has tried to max out the parking, essentially, and that's what we're looking at here. Yeah, and then the design issue is another thing. I think that's probably one for your consideration rather than me to speak on.
Right, thank you for that. Ed, just a query, then that definitely says that this particular developer has gone over and above in providing parking compared to national guidelines. Is that correct?
Chair, it's the Somerset parking strategy. Yeah, so that would require 14.2 car parking spaces and 4 cycle storage spaces. And there is a cycle storage shed or whatever, if you like. It's sort of right next to the uppermost of the 3 disabled bays at the top there, and that would be secured by condition as well.
Right, thank you, Ed. You answered the question, and I wanted to make sure that everybody understood the situation there. Thank you. Right, who would like to speak next? No? Oh, okay, Mick.
Thank you, Chair, again. I'm just looking at a sort of aerial view of the access road at the back, and it does look unfeasibly small for the access of things like fire engines. And that's one of the parish council's objections, I think, to that. Not that it's got a rear access, but because if you need to access the rear, and because it's such a long extended building, that may well be the case. It's very difficult. It's not very wide. It's a track, as we saw. I'm not sure whether that, perhaps Highways would like to comment on that, because I'm not sure it's sufficiently wide enough, or the turn.
Okay, thank you, Mick. We will ask Emma to come in with her vast knowledge. Yes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. With regards to a fire engine needs to get within 45 metres of the site that it needs to attend to. There being other residential elements towards the rear. If this site's in trouble, so are they, to put it bluntly, and that is a very blunt answer. But as long as they can get within 45 metres, then they can attend to a fire on the site.
Thank you, Emma. Mick, I hope that satisfies you. It looks like it because you're being very quiet. Okay, thanks. Now, would anybody else like to have a comment before we go to a vote? Okay, do we have a proposal? We don't have a proposal yet, do we? So we're looking for a proposer and a seconder for.
I'm happy to propose approval.
Your pros
in line with officer's recommendation.
Okay, that's fine. So that you're that one. Who's going to second? Dawn. Okay, Dawn Frank. Okay, let's go to the vote. All those in favour of approval, along with Martin and the officer's recommendation, please. 9. All those against? And are there any abstentions? 1 abstention. Okay, so that motion is carried. We will now have a 10-minute comfort break, which will take us up to 4 o'clock or just gone. So try not to be late back. Thank you.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I can't shut the windows. I wish I could. Permanently close them. I am calling. You're gonna go.
Yeah, the way today. Yeah. This might be the way today.
Are you going to vote today? You're going to take place. I think so.
Can I pick up my Thanks for all that.
You could always remember. No, you can't.
I'm gonna get you one as well. Just no. Yeah, I had a lot of recognition back in the day. Switched on. Not like you used to. That lady is there. It seems okay, it's a bit small, it seems okay. But yeah. Yes. Even when people ask questions, good to finish by now. It's terrible. Well, it's yeah. Worse. You see, do you see him sitting in there? Yeah, yeah, well, it's quite nice, but I obviously brought it. And and need to like. Yeah. Like they sort of said me, when they talked out, really, I hadn't realized it before. No, she's not. Well, that's. It's good. When she made the episode, she was still working. That was what I know. That's what I thought. Suddenly, it's been. Yeah, okay.
Oh, I see.
Very well.
Oh, that is totally.
Philip takes passion. Philip takes.
A sense of humour as well. Next thing, when representing.
He's married. She lives in the old farmhouse. I never knew. What's the son, John? So he's running the.
We'll do that.
I've been doing some bits and pieces.
These days I can imagine are non-stop.
Yeah, I know. I think it's a pleasure. She did try. Thank you for your information. I'd have read them. Oh, yeah, yeah. I'm sure it's on eight.
So, no, I understand. My wife like that. Easy to get away with murder. You go murder. Yeah, well, we don't think it's something big. I saw the cardiologist last week and he said, I'm putting you forward for a, what do you call it? Bypass. So, no, I've had a pacemaker. You've got to be able to tolerate I said, well, the old in the bold.
Okay, everyone, can we regain our seats and get ready for the next one? So everybody's here, everybody's back. We're running a little bit behind schedule here today, so let's see if we can be a bit more succinct at times. Okay, thank you. Nikki, I think we're on agenda item 8, which is yours, which is land to the southeast of Bradford Road at Frome in Somerset. And I think it's a solar park. So if you'd like to give us the benefit of your knowledge, please.
Right, thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone, again. Is this going to work? Okay, so this is an application for a large solar farm with associated development, including a battery storage facility. It's proposed for 40 years and then it would be returned to agricultural use. The applicant states that it would provide renewable energy to over 16,000 homes. The application site is to the east of the village of Road. It's either side of the A361. And the site area has been amended following detailed pre-application discussions, including with landscape specialists. And it's set out into proposed development zones, which I'll show in a later slide. In terms of heritage assets, we can see the road conservation area, which is set out into 2 parcels. And there are listed buildings within the conservation area and scattered across the local area. Public right-of-way context, there are routes through, nearby and adjacent to the site, all proposed to be maintained. Here is the proposed development zones of the site. And here's a layout plan. There's a section in the layout plan just explaining how the application is submitted on the basis of the Rochdale envelope. So a detailed layout is to be agreed by condition, and this is an envelope of the worst case scenario in terms of development. So that's probably worth bearing in mind. There are some set parameters agreed, including accesses, the construction compounds, and that no inverters would be constructed in the immediate setting of Flexham Farm, which is one of the listed buildings, which I'll come on to shortly. So here's the access and compound plan. So we have 3 accesses, all existing. The bulk of the access use and local highway network use would be during construction, which is anticipated to last for 30 weeks. And then after that, it's anticipated and typical of solar development that there will be low levels of vehicle trips to the site. So this is an inset of development zone 16, which is accessed south of Monkley Lane, that shows the battery storage area and the substation area. There's also additional landscaping proposed next to the byway, which you can see on the right of that image there. Elevation of the panels. I haven't put in all the plans because there's quite a lot of proposed kind of associated development. So there's inverters scattered through the site, 28 as a maximum. That would look like this. The substation compound, again, south of Monkley Lane. Battery containers. Spare parts container. There are conditions proposed for detailed materials and colours to come forward through condition of these buildings. Gates, again, subject to a condition for detailing, and there are mammal holes that have been agreed with the applicant and the ecologist for hedgehogs and the like. And here's the fencing, which is put forward on a similar basis. So the applicant has proposed a permissive byway in the area shown in pink here. So that would be operational for the lifetime of the application. So as the solar farm is operational, then that would come into use, and there are conditions to control that. And then after 40 years, when the proposed solar farm would be decommissioned and removed from the site, then that would then cease to operate. And that's come through during the life of the application following consultation comments. Oh, that's 2. Other changes that we've seen during the life of the application is moving the solar farm development away from Flexham Farm, confirming that there wouldn't be any inverters near Flexham Farm, and increasing the landscaping in this area. In terms of agricultural land classification, the Natural England indicative mapping shows that the land is 3 good to moderate. So this just gives us an overview of the suggested quality of the agricultural land. Applicants are then required to submit detailed site surveys to assess the on-the-ground agricultural land quality. And as you can see, the most of the site is considered 3B, which is not the best and most versatile land. 4% of it is 3A, which falls into that category. In terms of updates since the committee report was published, 1 new neighbour has objected, but no new planning matters have been raised, so the application remains recommended for approval. Okay. a planning balance. So we don't have a tilted balance this time because we're not dealing with housing. So we're looking at a flat planning balance, and we're looking at the benefits and the harms. So it's acknowledged that there are landscape harms with the proposal, although the landscape officer has not objected to the proposal. There are some other harms. The significant benefits with the proposal are the renewable energy, which would, in my view as a planning officer, tip in favour of approval of the development. It is also noted that those harms would be 40 years, and then the land is proposed to be returned into agricultural uses. So they would be, although 40 years is a long time, that's not permanent. Happy to take any questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Nikki. We'll move on quickly at the moment. We'll be back. Don't worry. You're not going to get away easily. Can Mr. Holloway would like to speak first, please? He's in danger of getting a parking ticket. You have 3 minutes, Mr. Holloway.
Thank you for this opportunity to speak, and I will be brief, especially as my car parking ticket is running out. I have no doubt that as a country and a planet, we need to develop and promote new technologies so as to reduce and eventually eradicate the need for harmful fossil fuels. However, it is equally important that this should be done with due consideration, so benefits are maximised and appreciated, not undermined by inappropriate implementation that would damage the local communities. I believe that this is an example of such a poorly considered project, one that has little support from the local community, the public at large. A lot of individuals and organisations, including Historic England, Natural England, the CPRE, have raised a long list of well-argued objections. And the Parish Council have done a particularly impressive job, I think, in compiling their paper that clearly states why they believe the proposal should be rejected. I would just like to highlight a few points that merit further comment, I think. These are just bullet points. This is a large-scale project that will significantly change the character of a hitherto rural area, and 40 years is not a temporary time frame. In effect, the agricultural land will be lost forever, and food security is also an increasingly important issue. A lot of the so-called mitigation is merely masking, it will take time, and is superficial, I believe, having read it thoroughly. And biodiversity, well, I've read it, but you know, I absolutely believe that biodiversity will be affected negatively. It is hard to imagine that there are no more appropriate sites that could be found than this one. And the claims about eco-friendly power and sustainability are questionable, given, well, frankly, having looked at those slides up there, you can make your own mind up from that. And there are better ways of providing alternative power than this, especially as the claims regarding the power output apparently are questionable. And what it is definitely not is a farm. There are no discernible benefits to the local community, and I suspect that the few and indeed probably temporary jobs are unlikely to be for locals. They'll probably be supplied by specialists who are distant from the area. And even the planning report, as we've just seen, highlights concerns about the nature of the proposal. This is an industrial scale project in a rural area that will change the very essence of it, and it will blight the village for generations if allowed to proceed. Thank you.
And thank you very much. And I hope you get back in time to get your parking ticket.
So do I.
Thank you. Okay, next we have Mr. Fletcher Robinson. Please. And you also have 3 minutes, Mr. Robinson.
Right. Yes, I'm the planner for CPRE and they've asked me to come and speak. This is a huge dominating solar farm, more than twice the size of the historic village of Rhodes, coming very close to its edge. Historic England said on the 4th of April that, quote, our concerns remain, unquote, despite the recent scheme amendments. 3 parish councils have objected. There should be a much larger buffer zone separating the village from the scheme. The scheme will change the character of the setting of the village and its conservation area and nearby listed buildings from farmland to a 140-acre expanse of glass, metal and plastic. The developers say will power 16,000 homes, but full capacity can only be reached for a few weeks a year at best in summer. In fact, the annual contribution is 10% of full capacity because, as the UK government energy statistics make clear, a load factor has to be applied, which hasn't been in this case, to account for zero energy production at night and effectively none in winter months. Solar may be relatively cheap, but it's hugely inefficient compared to offshore wind. Solar needs 25 times as much land as Hinkley Point C to produce 25 times less energy. And one small modular reactor covering just 2 football pitches could power 1 million homes. We need to keep these facts in mind when we're considering whether it's okay that a historic Somerset village like Rhodes with 74 listed buildings should lose such a huge swathe of its historic rural setting. It's not okay. We must strike a balance. There has to be some discrimination applied about where solar farms are to be located. Rhodes neighbourhood plan and conservation area appraisal both highlight the contribution made to heritage significance and Rhodes village character by its surrounding farmland. It's no answer to say the harm is only for 40 years. As appeal inspectors have pointed out on numerous occasions, that's the rest of our lives and most of our children's lives. The case officer thinks in her report that the developer's agreement to change the colour of the panels from blue to black will lessen the harm. She's entitled to her opinion, but we disagree. It's just fiddling around at the edges. We agree with Area East, your own conservation officer. She says it will harm the rural setting of Rhodes conservation area and the setting of listed buildings, and that the proposed landscape mitigation is a poor attempt to conceal the scheme and won't work. As the conservation officer says, the question remains, why does the solar farm need to be located so close to the conservation area? And we would add, why choose a place which will blight 3 well-used village footpaths, 2 running through the site and 1 along the edge? The scheme should properly be refused on grounds of harm to the character and appearance of the village entrance and harm to heritage, to the setting of heritage assets, so that a new scheme can come forward that is pulled much further back from the historic village and nearby listed buildings. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Cheers. And next we move on to Mr. Sean Freeman, please. And you also have 3 minutes, Mr. Freeman.
Thank you. I endorse all that CPRE has said and what you'll hear from Rhodes Parish Council. I'm here to speak on behalf of the residents of Monkley Lane to address the inadequacies of the responses to our concerns that we've raised about using Monkley Lane as access to part 3 of the development. Monkley Lane is a narrow single track lane which is only 2 metres wide in part. I respectfully argue that Highways has not properly assessed the reality on the ground of using this lane for access. On entering the lane from the busy 60-mile-an-hour A361, an HGV driver can see only 50 yards into the lane, and the trimming of trees will not increase this. If I'm in a lorry or a car pulling a trailer 60 metres from the 361, we will not have seen each other. Either the HGV backs very dangerously onto the 361, or I'm asked to back up 300 metres to the site entrance, which is unacceptable. In reply to concerns raised, the report claims there to be 2 passing places on Monkley Lane and states a car and a lorry can pass using these, but there are no passing places. These are private entrances, often occupied by parked vehicles. The responses fail to mention that 2 HGVs or an HGV and a car pulling a trailer could simply not pass. I drive a lorry and we have cars and trailers visiting our yard because I live on the lane. So we're not talking about just site traffic. Reports argue the verges and 1 metre of driveways are owned by the council, but the verges are all soft with deep ditches either side, which are important and used, and there's nowhere to even make these parking places. Responses to residents' concerns argue that residents manage the current farm traffic, but this is misleading because the milk HGV comes only late in the evening, doesn't bother us. Responses also state that the volume of traffic will be low, but figures used are highly misleading because they are averages over the 30-week period of construction. Some days there may be none, of course, but on others there will be chaos. Reports contradict discussions I've personally had with the applicants who stated 20 to 40 vehicles some days will be on the site. That's 1 every 15 minutes. The obvious solution is for all traffic accessing sites south of the A361 to use the main entrance to the farm just 200 metres along the A361, which is already going to be used for access to the farm. The counter argument to this is that it'll disturb their businesses that's run from the farm, but it's already going to be used as access. And hang on, the report says that the volumes will be low, so such disturbance would be low. We can't have it both ways. There is no justification in the report for accepting the danger of 2 access points only 2 metres apart on the A361. Records show the farmer himself suffered a significant accident on the entrance to Monkley Lane a few years ago. Are they aware of this? Managing 2 access points will be difficult enough along this vast stretch. Managing a single access point would obviously reduce the risks. A bridleway joins the lane and horse riders will be in danger with so much additional traffic. My wife and I keep horses and we walk them down the lane from our yard to our paddock, being at opposite ends of the lane 4 times each day. Our horses are not used to HGVs and being naturally spooky creatures, there's a risk of one getting spooked, escaping and running onto the A361, which represents a real risk to life. Please record that comment. The farmers keep young racehorses, but they have already made alternative arrangements over their own land to avoid using Monkley Lane to keep their horses safe. But we and other horse riders do not have this luxury. Measures should be taken to keep everyone equally safe. It's the farm that will benefit financially every 40 years, and so if there's some pain for that, they should suffer that pain since they'll have the gain. It's only 30 weeks of construction. And can I finally say that there is this overarching principle of maintaining community harmony. But where is that in these proposals as far as the Monkley residents is concerned? Oh, and there's one further thing, sorry. Fire engines, they need a wider lane than 2 metres. It's their own regulations, not mine. And we've only got 2 metres. So the simple common sense solution, forgive me overspilling, is it's so simple and so common sense. Use the main entrance to the farm as the single entrance to the site south of the lane.
Okay, well, I think we're at the end of the 3 minutes, so we've been a bit generous and give you a little bit longer.
Thank you for your generosity.
Okay.
For listening to speak.
Right, thank you. Now we're going to move on to the supporters, and I'm going to read out a statement from Mr. Dave Fuller, as I don't believe is here. And so if you bear with me, as I've already said, I'd forgotten my glasses today or misplaced them. Right, I would like to register my support for the Bluebell Wood Solar Farm project. I will be a direct neighbour to the solar farm, with parts of the project being in view of my house and garden, but that does not worry me. As a family, we embrace renewable technologies and already have solar panels on our own roof to provide clean energy. I believe we as a community and country need to embrace solar farms, even if they are in our own backyard. I talk to my children who don't understand the fuss. We as a mature generation need to think about them and how we leave the country. Climate change is affecting our farmers now. We've seen almost non-stop rain since last year, but changing the way we produce electricity will help slowly affect climate change in turn helping farmers. This project will bring other ecological benefits once established, such as biodiversity in bees and butterflies, for example, which in turn helps other crops. There is a possibility of sheep grazing, and the project would also stop massive amounts of nitrogen to being spread on the land, polluting our precious waterways. While I understand there will be a short-term disruption during the construction stage, I firmly believe the long-term benefits outweigh any temporary inconveniences. Please will you consider my family's support as you deliberate. Thank you, Dave Fuller. Thank you, Mr. Fuller. Next, we move on to, where are we to? Andy Fussell, please. And you have 3 minutes, Mr. Fussell.
Okay, all right. Good afternoon. I am the owner of Road Hill Fishery and the land that surrounds it and is included in this solar application. As a farmer, I am constantly encouraged to diversify, and central government and local government are telling me this all the time. What better way than to achieve it with a solar farm? I previously looked at both wind turbine and biodigestion within the farm to achieve renewable energy for my yard and farm operation. But it was met with huge objection, and I opted instead for rooftop solar on my barns. Creating solar energy is encouraged, promoted and supported nationally and locally to protect the environment and in turn society. This is well demonstrated by Somerset County Council and indeed Road Parish Council by declaring climate emergency and climate crisis. Road Parish Council has a climate crisis committee and previously approached me to support a community solar scheme in the village or just outside. Since it's not happened, this demonstrates though their desire and understanding of the need for renewable energy. This solar farm does exactly that. 16,000 homes worth of renewable energy, a biodiversity net gain of 50%, dual usage of poor agricultural land through electricity generation and the grazing of sheep. As I said, I am a farmer. My land is in this application is extremely wet. It is unworkable clay. It is unworkable when it's wet. It is unworkable when it is very dry. With ever decreasing weather windows due to ever decreasing or ever changing weather patterns, result is poor crop establishment, poor herbicide efficacy, and poor yields as a result. Even with the drainage that we have installed, waterlogging still occurs. This land is 3B or 4 at best. I farm it. Although an ideal location for fishing lakes, which I have in that area. Access number 1, which is into my area, was approved by Highways to receive over 2,000 HGVs in construction of the latest fishing lake, and not just over 30 weeks. Access number 3 is already used by HGVs for daily milk pickups and monthly feed deliveries for cows and straw deliveries during the summer with tractor and trailers. Again, not just for 30 weeks. We removed the 18-acre triangle field that you saw in the slide presentation to start with from the original consultation, as it was deemed to create a negative visible impact on the village. And this was a major change to address local concerns. Hedges will grow, gaps will fill in, trees will grow, and time, as always, will allow this development to blend in to the surroundings whilst providing desperately needed renewable low carbon electricity. The application meets Somerset own policies.
Your 3 minutes are up, Mr. Fussell.
Okay, I got 2 more lines.
All right.
It will be controlled via numerous conditions and as a result has been recommended for approval. Thank you.
And thank you. Next we have Max Lomax, please. And you also have 3 minutes, Max.
Good afternoon. I'm Matt Lomax, Planning Manager at Low Carbon, the applicant. The devastating impacts of climate change are being felt across the globe, and these impacts are accelerating, with records being continually broken. The imperative for action has never been greater, which the Council has recognised through a declared climate emergency. Last month, as part of its climate and emergency strategy, Somerset Council published its Energy Investment Plan. This recognised the critical role of solar energy in transitioning to net zero and champions a positive policy framework to be developed to achieve a 5-fold increase in solar PV capacity by 2050. It also identifies energy storage as an essential cornerstone of low carbon technology. It is against this backdrop that I'm before you today. Bluebell Wood Solar Farm is a 49.9 megawatt solar project. Once operational, it would provide enough electricity to power over 16,000 homes every year. This equates to 6.6% of the homes in the entire county and 33% of the homes in the Mendip district area. Critically, the project also includes 50 megawatts of battery energy storage, which helps to ensure the benefits of this low carbon electricity are maximised. We have worked closely with council officers and other consultees throughout the development process to ensure this project is sympathetic to environmental and land use constraints, mitigates impacts on the local community, and also creates community benefit. We are pleased that this positive engagement has resulted in a recommendation for approval. As well as the large amounts of green electricity, the project will also bring benefits through a biodiversity net gain of 50%, which will be achieved through the planting of almost 3 kilometres of new hedgerow and hedgerow trees and planting of species-rich wildflower around the site. It includes a permissive right-of-way linking to existing public rights-of-way, and a development would also allow sheep grazing during its operation. I would like to thank officers for the thorough review of the application and the council more generally for its engagement. And importantly, your officers have concluded that the project provides a positive planning balance where the benefits of the project outweigh the impacts. Councillors, you have before you today a proposal with officer support that can make a huge difference to the climate and energy security crisis, both locally and nationally. Therefore, I urge you to support your officer's recommendation and approve the application. Thank you.
Excuse me. Thank you very much. Yes. Okay, we're going to move on to the division members now. So we'll take them in alphabetical order. So Councillor Boyden, you're first.
Thank you, Chair. Just a quick question. The parish council was supposed to speak, but didn't manage to book it. Is it possible to read their statement out? Was that agreed? It's a procedural question firstly.
No, can't read it out, sorry,
Okay.
because it was too late to be submitted.
Okay, they should have got their, they should have been here on time and got it in on their request to speak on time, or their request for myself to read it.
Yeah, I think I've read it anyway. This one gives me conflicts clearly, because we want to address climate change. We want to improve the generation and increase the generation of renewable energy in the country, in the county, in the area. But this also has local impacts which have led to objections from the parish council, from 60 residents, and from our council's conservation officer in terms of landscape and setting. And that's all in the report, which is very clear. So thank you for that very good report. So I'm conflicted on this one. Ideally, I would like to see it go away and come back better in a form that the parish council wouldn't object to, the Monkley Lane residents wouldn't object to, because I think there is a real issue with there's an issue with the Monkley Lane access. And I know the report deals with it in a sort of, well, you can't object to this and you can't stop it, basically, which is a harsh way forward, I think. I suppose the question on Monkley Lane is what happens if a HGV comes out of the dairy and turns left and goes towards the A361 entrance, and an HGV for the construction period of the solar farms has come out, already entered the lane. I suppose one of them has to reverse, which would be the dairy one. But what's the banksman? How would that work in relation to keeping horses safe and other vehicles safe? Because I know that's mentioned. I'm not sure where it's detailed. And the other concern I've got is the landscape impact, and it's the setting of the village, the setting of its conservation area, the setting of the listed buildings. And I know that's dealt with in the report, but clearly it's a big concern amongst a lot of the residents and the parish council. But the sheer scale of this proposal, which seems to be twice as large as the footprint of the village itself, and it's difficult to so there's no cordon sanitaire around a village. There's no policy saying you can't build solar farms within X meters or kilometers of a village. But it seems to me that the village, including the Climate Change Committee and the Parish Council, are objecting on the basis of that they feel that it's too close and it affects the rural open landscape setting of the whole village, and they feel that it impacts the landscape too much. Now, it's difficult to put a figure on where it would be acceptable and where it is unacceptable, but this kind of feels too big. But it's difficult to say how. I say the conservation area, the conservation officer puts it in terms of if they remove development zones 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, that objection would be removed. But it's the only objection that is sustained, despite, I suppose, discussions with planning officer. It's the only objection we have as a council officer team in there. So that's what I'm thinking. Is it possible to go away and come back with some of those areas removed and the Monkley Lane traffic impact reduced? That's where I am at the moment. So
Okay, thank you, Adam, for that. I presume that's a proposal for a deferral from you already, yeah?
that could be it. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Dawn, you're next.
I think Adam and I are really in a very difficult position as well, because we've been elected in the community to represent them. But when you look at 60 objections in a village of 766, and we are taking out the children, of course, who can't engage in the process, it's less than 8% of the population of the village that have objected. We also know that people are more likely to come out when they object, and we saw last week in the elections. But it's also really important to consider, is the objection a representative of the village, or are they simply just a representative of the people who have objected? In the interest of fairness, I've got a few things about for the application. You know, as Andy Fussell has said, parts of the land is very clay heavy, unsuitable for farming, and retains water. That's why he has a fishery down there. There are ponds and lakes on the land. It is also possible to graze under the panels, and the hedges and other landscaping will be new and will grow. So that is in the future will make a difference. The purpose of a planning authority really is to support development and growth within policy, strategy, and legal framework. And I feel that maybe the question is this development, which would be a yes for the application. But when we look at against, we have a lot of roofs, factories, barns, where we can put solar panels on. And the CPRE with the Rooftop Revolution promotes the solar panels, of course. And that's something that to be considered as well. Personally, I'm also concerned about technology. There's two aspects to the technology. One is the battery technology, which I know daily technology changes. It moves forward. I mean, tomorrow it might be a very different situation to what we're even sitting with today. But my other concern is also around the solar panels being made and recycled. Where do they come from? Where are they made? And also, if there's only 1 or 2 people in the country that are able to recycle the panels at the moment, then that could also be a problem. Now, I do understand that this proposal is for 40 years, and we'll be living in a very different world then. I doubt anyone in this room will probably be here to see the end of it, but that's not, I think some of you might be young enough. But a lot can happen in 40 years, and maybe we are rushing into something that is. Remember the diesel rush? We were all told the diesels were going to be the best thing, which are no longer. So I just am concerned about that. Number 3, the electricity generated from these panels will not, I understand, benefit the people of Road directly. And number 4, as a historian, I am really concerned about the archaeology of the site, and specifically the no dig policy. And I know that's been mitigated, but I also would like to know what's there before we destroy what makes us who we are. The Parish Council has declared a climate emergency, and in some ways this would be supported by them because, of course, it's clean and green. But on the other hand, it's about the natural environment. So they could also have said, which they have, that they don't support it. On page 170 of the report, it states that that this is open rural farmland of historic fields. But is that not true for all the land where our houses currently sit on? And my last thought is about the farmers. There are no people in our community who love the land more than those who make their living from the land. They get their hands dirty in the soil. Have you seen a farmer with clean fingernails? And they are part of the heritage of every village, and they also feed us. And we know times are difficult for them, and we also know that the climate change means that their land becomes less productive and also very much less predictable. And maybe we should give them an opportunity to diversify.
Thank you, Dawn. Very good. Who would like to speak next? Martin. Martin D.
Thank you. Yeah, instinctively, I'm hugely in favour of this. And I don't think we should, I don't think we're here to necessarily discuss the relative merits of solar against wind, against nuclear. Also, this is actually about siting a solar farm in a particular area. And there are problems in that respect. And I have received letters from the parish council. And I think there was in the letter I received a sense of conciliation about this, that actually they're not entirely against it. I think Adam touched on some of this, but would like to see some modifications perhaps. I hope I'm not misinterpreting that view. They're prepared to work with the developer. I think there's three things here I notice of just looking at asking the officer here about benefits and harms. Landscape harm says significant harm. Heritage harm said in this report says significant harm, but it's now downgraded to low moderate. Is that because the panels were drawn away? The panels that were nearest the village were actually reduced.
I think that should be.
Yes, Nick, you'd like to
it should be.
reply?
On the report, the planning board report we've received, I've got the right report, I hope.
I read it, he's doing amazing.
I'm not flipped over to another because there's a huge number of pages. It said heritage harm, significant harm. Page 86. I just assumed it had been updated. I wasn't trying to catch you out. Well, anyway, I think my question is, while you're looking at that, is it's a landscape significant harm. The question I want to ask is that seems to be crucial to the whole thing. It's the landscape harm against the environmental good that it could do. You know, are there any suggestions as to how we might reduce that significant harm?
My final officer recommendation on the planning balance is the low to moderate harm on heritage and significant harm on landscaping. So I'm acknowledging the landscape harm. It's a large development proposed. It would have a big impact on the landscape, but that needs to be balanced out against the benefits of renewable energy. So when I'm looking at appeal decisions that are coming out a lot from the planning inspectorate, there is invariably landscape harm. You know, these things are not invisible. So that is weighed in the planning balance. So my view as an officer is that when you weigh that in the balance, that it should be approved, and that I'm mindful of appeal decisions that I am reading when I'm making that officer recommendation. But yeah, it is a significant harm, and obviously, you know, members need to consider that in the overall balance. Also, I note that the landscape officer has not objected to the scheme. No. Has not objected to the scheme. So we've had a landscape consultant as part of the pre-application discussions, and we've had the landscape officer through the life of the planning application, and we have had some changes that have come through, and the final scheme as presented now, there is no landscape objection from the landscape officer.
Right, thank you, Martin, and thank you, Nikki, for that. Who would like to speak next? Claire?
Good today, aren't they? There you go.
Oh, God. It's okay. Thank you, Chair. So obviously I'm in favour of sustainable energy, but I'm not in favour of it being a kind of mitigation for irrevocably, put my teeth in, irrevocably. Yes. Do you want to say that on the mic? Yeah.
Irrevocably.
Yes, thank you. Changing the setting of the rural setting. It's 2.5 times bigger than the village. I'm also somebody who likes to listen to local voices that are represented by their parish councils. So I'm kind of not feeling that positive about it because of that scale and the impact really on local people, I'm afraid, at the moment. So I'll keep that short and sweet. Thank you.
Thank you, Claire. Martin L.
Thank you, Chair. I think a key thing about an application like this is actually that it can't be seen. That we really need the hedgerows there in all directions so that actually nobody can see this development, and that might be a suitable mitigation. I've been trying to see what the provision for comprehensive 100% hedging is, and I'm not clear of it, so I just would appreciate clarification from the officer. I'd like to illustrate that here in Shepherd's Mallet we have a solar farm which is causing considerable environmental harm because the hedging has never happened, and despite going to enforcement, nothing is ever done about it. And that is a real concern to me, and I'd have to pass this on to this particular application, that a promise of a hedge clearly never happened, may not happen, and therefore we may end up being caught out with that not having been met. Thank you.
Yep, it's working again now. Thank you for that, Martin. Would anybody else like to speak? Benty?
I have had, that was a question to the officer, please, Chair.
You'd like an answer?
Yeah, it was about the nature of the hedging.
Okay.
Thank you. Happy to respond. There is existing hedgerow retained and comprehensive hedgerow planting proposed. I can't say that it wouldn't be seen because that's probably not possible, but the hedgerows is significant, and there is also a soft landscaping plan proposed as a recommended condition that would come in there. In terms of conditions, as a local planning authority, we need to put in conditions that meet the conditions test. So we wouldn't be justified to refuse an application on the assumption that a condition wouldn't be followed. That would be an enforcement matter that would have to be taken up if that happened. I've had no indication that would be the case. So that'd be my view on that. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Nikki. You're okay with that, Martin?
Thank you, responsibly. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, and then we're going to go to Susie, then back to Benty. Okay.
I mean, I feel embarrassed every time we talk about these things because I'm way far from being expert, and I wish I knew a lot more than I do. But I always like to try and visualize whatever it is we are allowing or not allowing or facilitating or stopping people from doing here as a committee. So I saw that the inverters are 3 meters high by 12 meters long. I mean, just for people to kind of understand what that looks like, that's the length of this room up to those windows, basically. 28 panels like that. Are those 20, is that what you said? Sorry, did you say 28 of those inverters across the site?
Yeah, the inverter buildings would be scattered across the site, so 2.9 metres high and 12.2 metres in depth.
So, yeah, okay, so they're not all going to be positioned together, they'll be kind of, so pretty much, if there's 28 of those in what is effectively an area of 180-ish acres, you're talking about one of those in every kind of 6-acre space? Or are they all going to be grouped together?
It's shown on the layout plan, so they'd be scattered across, so they just come, they're shown on the layout in ones as the inverters. But then there's the kind of substation where there'd be more of a cluster of development with the substation and the batteries. And that's further south of Monkley Lane.
And then the individual panels, what size are they? Or what height, how high are they? Because I saw that the fencing, which I presume is the perimeter fencing, is a bit more than 3 metres high, which again is a high fence. That's like driving past Yeovilton Air Station. It's a high fence, again, up to those windows, not something you'd expect to see in a rural setting. So I'm just trying to understand, yes, if you could have a hedge, as Martin was saying, great, it would at least look a bit more natural. And we all know you can buy hedging, maybe not 3 metres high, but definitely 2 metres high. It's very expensive, but you can buy it. So yeah, I'm trying to understand what this whole thing is going to look like. So how big are the panels, please?
The panels would be 3 to 4 metres in height as an indicative, but as I say, the detailed layout and plans are subject to condition. But as a Rochdale principle, that's all the highest that the planning board should be considering. Fencing again is subject to another recommended condition, but that can come next to hedgerow planting. That's for security purposes.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand. It's just that obviously the hedging, as Martin said earlier.
Yeah, Susie, you've had a
No, I
question.
just want to finish making my point. I just think it's really important for people to understand. I want actually to be able to support this project, but at the same time, I would like it to be something that is not a hideous blot on the landscape. And I feel like there has to be a way for everyone to get what they want here. And at the moment, it seems to me like that isn't going to be the case. So, 3 metres, it's, 2 average sized men, one standing on the other's shoulders.
Okay, we're not going to argue about men's heights. Let's get back on track here. Yeah, I think Benty hasn't had her say.
Sorry, Benty and Barry.
Yeah, Benty first, please.
Thank you very much. On the way to Wincanton, there was a beautiful field full of grazing cows that was turned into solar panel, all of it solar panel. No matter how high the hedge that runs all the way down, no matter how high that hedge is, I can still see when I drive past to go to work, the barren land that are in there, barren where there before were grazing cows. Further down in Holton, a huge flat area that you cannot avoid is solar panels. They are not the most beautiful thing in this world. I wish they were, but they're not. Up around in Shepton Mallet, we have got solar panels. And I am sorry, I wish the government would make a law that every building that existed should have the solar panels. But there isn't a law like that in this country. There is where I come from, and therefore they are not quite as an nuisance. And I feel sorry because also for the flooding, because now they've found out it's a good idea to put solar panels on a slope so it really can rain down in people's houses. I wish, but it's no good. I'm sorry.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Benty. Most appreciated. Barry, you're next one on the list.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We've heard that solar farms are hideous blocks on the landscape, and I would refer you to all the quarries on the Mendips. They're absolutely hideous blocks on the landscape. If you look at them from a helicopter, you drive past the front gate and you never see them. And I suspect with the hedges in place, you will never see this after the construction is finished, which will be problematical, I dare say. But I drove along the A303 for 5 years before I realised there was a solar panel on the right-hand side when you leave Betherton. You do not see them. And I would suggest that villagers of Road and all the other people who want good, clean energy would rather have solar panels than a wind turbine sticking up. Don't want one of those hideous things. And this construction period will pass. But I think it's incumbent on the planners, if they lay conditions down to say, yes, you must have hedges and you must keep hedges, not rely on the developers to come and tell you, oh, sorry, I took those hedges out. I didn't mean to. Somebody ought to go and enforce the conditions that are laid on the planning approval, assume it's approved, not just leave it to the developer. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Barry. I have a tendency to agree with you on that subject of hedges. Okay, who we got next? Cedric.
Thank you. To lay some of Susie's fears around height, it actually says in the report, and I've only just dug it out, so I couldn't remember all the report. I wouldn't expect any of us to. It was a very comprehensive report. It says it hopes the majority of the panels be a height of 2.5 metres rather than 3 to 4. It actually says, and I'm quoting, the solar panels been assessed for the purpose of landscape and visual impact as being a max of 3 to 4 metres in height, with the upper figure using areas at highest risk of deep flooding, which is the worst case scenario. However, it's actually possible the majority of panels be a height of around 2.5 metres, unquote. I'm a supporter of clean energy, but I do feel this site, I think, and I share Adam's reservations, it's actually a bit big. It's almost a scattergun approach of how much of this land that's unworkable can we throw solar panels on. I too, and possibly if Adam has a proposal for deferral in relation to coming back and mitigating the size of it, I think it's a bit big. So if that was a firm proposal for a deferral, Adam, in terms of coming back and maybe shrinking the size of it slightly, I'm prepared to second you on that.
I think Martin wishes to come in.
Yes, Chair. You've now got a substantive proposal to defer. Just two things to say. Obviously, there's always the risk that an applicant might appeal for non-determination. Right to do that. But also, if the committee is minded to defer, we need to be very clear on the reasons for the deferral and what officers and the applicant are being asked to do, and to be comprehensive in the reasons for a deferral, so we don't come back again with the next time more information being required. Thank you. I don't know whether Mr. Trafford wants to add anything.
Adam, you'd like to come back and flesh out your proposal?
Thank you, Chair, and everyone else. Yes, I'd like to propose deferral so that the applicants can perhaps reconsider the access and the impact on Monkley Lane for the reasons raised by objections of Parish Council and residents there, and also to reconsider the scale of the development in order to potentially try and reduce the landscape impacts and the historic landscape impacts on heritage assets, the rural setting of Road Village in its conservation area, and the listed buildings as identified by the conservation officer of the council and the Road Parish Council and others. Is that comprehensive enough? Is that specific?
Sounds okay to me.
Those are two reasons. I don't think we can address them here.
Yes, I mean those two reasons we understand. I don't know whether Mr. Trafford wants to add anything.
I think that's sufficient. You effectively have said your reason for a deferral are to consider the implications of the access from Muckley Lane and where is acceptable, and then to also consider the quantum of the application scheme to reconsider the landscape and heritage impacts of the proposal.
Yes, thanks.
Okay, thank you. Martin D.
Yeah, I'd like to second that, particularly with regard to the access. That's an extremely busy road, and we must ensure that there's no additional danger there. So I think that's a very strong reason to to defer?
I don't know,
Susie.
I don't know if this is too specific a thing to request, but I just think that there's mediation with the village, and particularly the gentleman who was speaking about his concerns of moving horses up and down 4 times a day. That is actually quite a significant undertaking, and it sounds like everyone's like, whatever, move your horse, it's your issue. But to have to do that 4 times a day, and suddenly where you've lived for however long, there are all these trucks and things, that it becomes actually dangerous 4 times a day to move your animals. I just, you know, if there is a way of getting around that, if they can be given access across land or something, I think just conversations and mediation to try and get to a situation where the people living there, as well as the whoever is putting this solar farm together, are all happy or happier, that would be great. Thank you.
Right, thank you, Susie. Martinell.
Simon, did you want to
Oh, Simon. Simon, you want to come in?
I just wanted to say, I think Councillor Hart's comments there are legitimate and are well thought out. But what we have to remember as planning authority is that we've got our development plan policies, and our development plan policies, if you like, set out the framework against which we can assess applications. And whilst, yeah, it'd be great for all applications that we bring to you to have support from the parish council, that's not a legitimate reason for you not to make a decision today. But I think the reasons that Councillor Boyden set out, which were twofold: the access from Mutley Lane, and then to reconsider the heritage and landscape impacts, we can have a conversation with the applicant to see if there are any aspects of the current scheme that can be revised to respond to those points, but it won't be mediation with the parish council, unfortunately.
Okay, that's a nice idea.
Right. Thank you for that, Simon. Now we'll go back to Martinell.
Again, harping on about the fact the issue of higher hedgerows to hide. Just wondering if Adam would be happy to just make sure that that's included as part of his proposal, because I just that is an area in which I have no confidence whatsoever in the proposal. Is he listening?
Apologies, Martin, could you repeat that?
I just wonder, does your proposal, will it happily deal with this issue which I'm harping on about, of hedgerows to hide the development? Do you feel like what you're saying with the deferral encompasses that completely? Because I'll be happy to support
hedgerows are part of the landscape, so yes.
You're happy that would be fully covered. Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, just on that last point.
Okay, yeah, Simon.
Again, I think we need to. We've got a brief from you to reconsider the heritage and landscape impacts as a result of the quantum. In terms of the issue of hedgerow, and I mean, within that we can consider the need for new planting, but in terms of the enforcement of that new planting, you know, that's a separate issue. And again, really, you know, this in your role as decision makers, you shouldn't make your decisions based on the fact that, well, actually there might be an enforcement issue further down the line. If there is, we'll deal with it. You have to make your decision based on what's in front of you. But within that overall reassessment to consider heritage and landscape impacts, we can consider the scope of existing and additional hedgerows that are proposed within the development area.
Okay, Simon, I think that makes sense. Are you happy with that, Martin? Yeah. And who's next?
Dawn, please, then Mike.
Yeah, Dawn, you can see she's waving her hands.
I would also suggest that if we do defer, that the committee visits the site, because I think looking at something on a flat page is not always very easy to see where the views are, where you will see things, what's higher, what's lower, because no land is flat. So I think that's really important if we do defer, that we go as a group to go and have a look at the land.
Thank you for that, Dawn, because most people do or are supposed to go and have a look at the sites, but they don't. So maybe we can have an officer arranged site visit there at some stage. quickly to, so that people and members can get a view. Yeah, would that suit members? You don't look overly enthusiastic. Okay. Susie is enthusiastic.
No, I do. I think it's a really good idea because I think it's easy enough in most of the things that we have to look at to do a drive-by and have a bit of a look. But something like this is much more difficult to really understand what's going to be where because it's such a large area. So I think that's a great idea.
Okay, so if you can manage that, Nick, that would be a good idea. If it is voted to be deferred. Thank you. Who've we got next? Mick, your turn.
Yes, I just wanted to support the idea of deferment because it's clear that the landscape officer and the conservation officer have made recommendations, and they're quite specific. I mean, the landscape officer wants to recommend a hedgerow management condition to ensure a hedgerow is managed and maintained to provide at least 2.5 height. And they talk about areas where the hedgerow aren't very, they're thin and weak in some locations. So basically they want that to be improved. And I think just looking at what they've said, if they were happy then to approve without recommendations, we'd be there. You see what I'm saying? The landscape officer is not, it's basically, she's not saying, I don't think this should happen. She's saying, I would recommend to mitigate these concerns, and she gives you a list. And the same with the conservation officer. She's struggling like we are to go, well, we don't really want this, but she's saying, if you do something to these areas or reduce those areas, so it's a no-brainer to say, go back to them and satisfy at least both those officers, perhaps even English Heritage if we really stretch it. And we're there, aren't we? We've done what we can. I really want solar power in this country. What's annoying is when people put forward things which aren't in ideal locations, and this may be one of them. But we're stuck with it. We could refuse it, but the officer has recommended, and you know, that's my view anyway.
Okay, I think we've had quite a bit of discussion over this. At the moment, the only proposal on the thing is Adams, seconded by Edric. Does anybody else wish to put any other proposals? Barry?
So we go with the officer's recommendation, Chair.
Is there anybody prepared to second Barry? No. I'm afraid you're out of luck, Barry. Okay, so we have to do this. Martin, I'm coming to you to discuss how we take this vote.
Well, the only proposal on the table is for deferral from Councillor Boyden. Two reasons. One, to reconsider the access at Monkley Lane. And secondly, to look at the scale of the development in terms of its harm to the landscape and heritage assets, in particular conservation areas and listed buildings. And if the deferral is passed, then officers will organise a committee site visit.
Okay, thank you. I think that sounds sensible. How long are we going to put? Are we going to put a limit on how long it can be deferred for? 3 months? 2 months? What would that be for you, Adam, to add that to your 3 months?
3 months.
You're happy with that, Edric?
Yes.
Is the seconder? Okay. Right, we'll go to the vote then. All those in favour of deferral? All those against? And any abstentions? No, that motion is carried. We will be deferring that one for a maximum of 3 months. Thank you. Yeah, Edric has declared an interest in the next one, which we're moving on to now quickly. I'm conscious of the ticking clock as always. So this one is agenda item 9, and I believe that's Lindsay who's taking that one.
It's me.
Oh, well, Annie, you're doing it instead of, are you? Yeah. Okay. That's fine. So if you would like to push forward with that, that will be really good.
Okay, so this is an application, it's a council application, so it's an application by Somerset Council on Somerset Council land in Westway Roundabout in Street, and it's for 2 advertisement signs. So the roundabout is the one that's between the Clark's Distribution Centre and Sainsbury's and McDonald's to Gravesham Way. So it's a 1 metre wide sign on the centre of the roundabout, and you can see there from that plan that it's sort of well into the centre, away from the highway signs that are noted by the green dots there. So there you've got the dimensions. So it's 1 metre wide, as I say. It's raised up on posts that are 28 centimetres tall. And then the actual hoarding itself is 0.5 metre tall. And then that's an image of what it would look like, obviously for advertising local businesses. And then there's just a photo showing you the roundabout itself, but I think people are probably quite familiar with the location. So it's been through highways. Highways are happy with it from a public safety point of view, from a visual point of view. It's not of concern to us, as I mentioned. It's more within the centre of the roundabout, so it doesn't distract from the highway signs, and it is much smaller than the ones that we were concerned with at the previous planning committee. So the officer recommendation is for approval.
Thank you, Anna. I was just going to ask, whatever happened to Simon? Maybe you can answer this one, or Martin. What happened at the appeals for the ones that we've had before? Did we not have one overturned by? I can't remember.
None of the decisions where you've refused signage that the council submitted ever got to appeal, but your decision to refuse the signboard on Station Approach at Frome, that was overturned, and the council awarded costs against or the inspector awarded costs against the council for its decision.
Thank you for clarifying that. I think members will have taken that on board. Okay. We don't have anybody to speak. We don't have I don't believe the division councillors are online. It would be Liz or Simon. Is either of them there? Can you see anybody there, Helen? No? Okay, so we'll go straight to the committee. Who would like to speak first? Dawn.
I'm just the roundabout that we just for consistency in Frome, we turned that down, didn't we? Yeah.
It was turned down, but it was overturned.
Not the roundabout.
No, not the roundabout.
That's
No.
Sainsbury's.
No, point of
The other one.
Point of information, Mr. Chairman. That was, I think you're confusing the two. The ones on the roundabout by Sainsbury's in Frome, we turned down, but that was our application. I don't believe we appeal against our own application. So as a matter of consistency, and we might be minded to turn this down.
Yeah.
But I would follow the advice of the local councillor, ward member. They're not commenting, so I don't know what to do.
Okay, I'm pretty sure that most of you know where this is, and you drive by there if you go to Bridgewater or somewhere like that. Barry, you got your hand up. Well done.
Oh, thank you. Yeah.
As Dawn tries to put it down.
There was a comment about this won't interfere with the road signage. Well, road signage, you don't have to read it. Road signs, you just look at them and there's an arrow that points that way and you go around the roundabout that way. We got enough trouble with traffic round roundabouts at the moment. We're adding to it by asking them to read some small lettering on a sign stuck in the middle of the roundabout. I just think it's a recipe for disaster, Mr. Chairman. I would vote against it.
You were going to go against it, against officer recommendation. Benty, you will second that. Okay, who else would like to comment? No, it doesn't seem to be an enthusiastic one. Anna, you'd like to come back,
As
or
we've
Emma?
got a highway expert in the room, I think we should.
We have. Let's make use of her. She's had an easy time there.
All I would add is that all of the applications, regardless of who they're from, so be it us or be it an external applicant, do go through a safety audit. And this one has been through the same safety audit that any other application that would have been submitted has or would have done. I got my tongue tied slightly there. You know what I mean. There's no favouritism, that it's one of our applications, basically. So it has been through a safety audit. It has passed the safety audit. There is no concern that it would cause a hazard on that roundabout.
And thank you for that, Emma. Right. So you're all aware of that, of what the expert advice is. Professional advice is there is no safety hazard. And I'm going to say, as I'm probably the closest person to there, I tend to agree, because it's a roundabout where you slow down quite a lot anyway to go round, and I can't see any harm in this one. So we've got a proposal though, haven't we already? So
Yes, Chair, we've had a proposal to refuse the application, which has been seconded, and I understand the refusal is on the basis of highway safety.
thank you, Martin. That explains that. So we better take that one quickly. Anna, you'd like to come back again quickly?
Yeah, sorry, just to make the point that obviously, that the highway expert has said that there's no objection, no concern with it. If it wasn't our land and it was to go to appeal, that would put us in quite a difficult position in terms of whether we're reasonable to go against that highway advice.
Thank you for that information, and that would mean that it would be a difficult one to defend, wouldn't it? Yeah, thank you for that. Okay, so now we're there. So now, what we have got at this moment in time is a proposal to refuse this one on grounds of safety, but it's against the advice of the professionals. Is that correct, Martin?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. So all those in favour of this proposal?
I'm prepared to upgrade that seconding if somebody wants me to, on the grounds of visual clutter.
Okay, whoever put the refusal one up, I can't remember now, you might be able to add that to it.
Yes, it was Councillor Clark and Councillor
Happy to add that, Chair.
Yes.
Thank you.
Right. So the substantive motion now has two reasons for refusal: highway safety and visual clutter. Better phrase.
Okay, everybody understands that. Everyone who is in favour of the motion, please vote now. All those against the motion?
3.
Any abstentions? No. So the motion is carried. Thank you. Okay. So there will be no sign at Sainsbury's. Bizarre. Thank you for that. We'll just wait for Martin to come back before we move on to number 11. You briefed the buggers. Okay, number 10 is not coming forward today, so we're moving on to number 11, which is land at the Orchard, Vicarage Lane, Norton St Philip. That's Frome, or near Frome. And change of use of agricultural to use class 3 residential erection of a single story dwelling house. Okay, so that one is going to Lorna.
I'm going to be the voice of Lorna. Okay, Chair. So as you mentioned, yes, it's change of use from agriculture to residential land, which includes the erection of a single-storey dwelling. There you can see the location plan. So the site is edged in orange, with the development limits of North St Philip to the north. You'll note the distance from the village, which is relevant. There we are. There we have the site plan. So the application site edged in red, other land in the applicant's ownership in blue. And sorry, I should mention this before you for two reasons. One reason. It's the app to a member of staff, so it wouldn't otherwise have come to committee. Oh, sorry. There's a problem with covering someone else's. Oh, sorry, one moment. My Teams has just chucked me out. Okay, sorry about that. So I'll re-clarify that. So it's before you because it's the officer recommendation and contrary to the parish council, but also because the applicant is related to a member of staff. So here we have the proposed site plan. So you've got the house in there, and then continuing with the allotments that they've got on the adjoining site as well. We've got the floor plans, and then the elevation plans. There's an aerial photo of the site as it is now. And then this is the location for the recycling collection point, which is down the drive. Other photos of the holding site. And the existing access and parking arrangements. So this application has been submitted under DP24 as a self-build. However, the officer's recommendation is for refusal because we don't feel that it meets that criteria. As I showed you at the beginning, it's too far outside of the development limits of the main settlement. And we're concerned that the visual impact, well, the design of the proposal doesn't fit in with the local area either. So as per the officer recommendation in the report pack, the recommendation is for refusal.
Thank you. Okay, I'm just looking here just to double check. No, there are nobody to speak. I believe then we go to, I think it's yours again, Adam. So your comment first and Dawn's second, alphabetically.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not going to spend much time on this one. I mean, I see that the parish council is actually in favour of this, and there is more support in writing from residents than not. So I don't really have a problem with this one. I like to see self-build. Could you just clarify again why it doesn't meet the criteria, apart from it being outside the village limit? Thank you.
So DP24 has criteria with regards to the size of the plot, with the size of the building, and that it has a close relationship. It sits on sort of the boundary of the development limit. So with this one, as per the report, it exceeds the floor space criteria. It significantly more than double exceeds the site criteria. And again, it doesn't have the relationship to the settlement that the policy looks for.
Okay, thank you, Lorna. You okay with that, Adam? Okay, cheers. Dawn, your turn.
Yeah, it's, if you know the parish council in Norton St Philip, they're very big on detail. So the fact that they support this is also a tricky one for me. If it's outside of the boundaries of the village, then I'm not sure if the building would have that much of an impact on the village, if that makes sense, if I'm making myself clear. But if it hadn't been a relative, it would have been refused, wouldn't it? So it would have just actually been refused.
Sorry, that, just to clarify, that was a mistake I made initially. So it was because of it's contrary to the parish. It's come in addition to the fact
Oh, I
that
see.
it's a relative.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Dawn, okay. Susie?
I think it's not that big. I hear everything you're saying. I hear all your little rules and regulations, but actually it's not that big. And if everyone in the locality is happy with it, including the person in that house in front, presumably, I just think let them get on with it, actually.
Okay, Martin would like to come in.
Yes, talking about rules and regulations. So the planning balance, and in this case, you're looking at whether it complies with development plan policy. And the advice from your officers that the relevant policy is clearly not met on a number of factors. So then, what is the balancing arguments for it, and do they outweigh that policy breach? So that's really what, if you're minded to approve the application, it's to explain why, in this particular circumstance, this would be acceptable.
Thank you, Martin. I think that explained to Susie.
Because we need more
Simon
houses.
wishes,
We're
or Anna
constantly
wishes to
being
come
told
in.
we need more houses.
Yeah.
We're constantly being told we need to allow people to build more houses in the area. So there's an answer.
Well, thank you for that, Susie. Anna, I think you or Simon wish to come back.
I just wanted to clarify in terms of the parish council. They said, although they said they support it, they did leave it to the local planning authority to actually make that judgment in terms of DP24. And as Lorna has explained, there's sort of 3 reasons why it doesn't meet DP24. Therefore, from an officer point of view, we could then consider this as an isolated dwelling in the countryside where there's no policy support. So it's a departure from the local plan.
Okay, thank you, Anna. Now you understand what Anna just said, Susie?
I understand all of it. Doesn't necessarily mean I agree.
No, that's very true. Are you proposing that we
Just wanted to throw it out there and we'll see what everyone else thinks.
Okay. Does anybody else have any comments before we look for a proposal? Okay, Mick.
I've just looked at some of the comments and support, and they're saying it's a sort of self-build, but the tenant or the resident wants to be off-grid. But I see no supporting evidence that they will be off-grid. I don't know how that works. I'm assuming they're basically not having electricity laid on or something like that, and they've got drainage to sort out, which is clear, but there's no sign of how they are going to support that being off grid. I mean, it's how far outside the area is it? It's within sort of a couple of 100 yards, is it, or less? It's outside the limit, but does distance make any difference? Perhaps the officer could make a...
Simon will give you an answer on that one.
Yeah,
thank you, Chair. Members, yeah, so effectively, in the report pack, we've set out our assessment of the application against your policy DP24. We say your policy, it doesn't comply with your policy DP24, which would allow self-builds in certain locations outside of settlement boundaries, but it has to be directly adjacent. So because this isn't directly adjacent, it can't comply, as a matter of fact, with your policy DP24. So if you're still wishing to approve it, notwithstanding the advice we've provided, your reason could be that you don't consider that it results in any harm, notwithstanding the unsustainable location and the benefits you consider of one dwelling house in a remote location outweigh the harms. Obviously, that's contrary to our recommendation, but in helping you take your debate on the application forward, that would be one aspect you could consider.
Okay.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Mick, for your question. Adam.
Me again, thank you, Chair. I think I'd like to draw this to a close if possible, and propose we go with the officer recommendation and test the water in the room. Thanks.
So that's proposed by Adam, seconded by Edric, that we go with the officer recommendation. Okay, anyone else for anything, any more? No, we're okay, so we can go to the vote. Okay, let's be straight. All those in favour of going with the officer recommendation, please raise your hands now. 6. All those against? 3. And abstentions? Okay, so that motion is carried, and unfortunately the people won't have their house at this time. Thank you. Right, we'll quickly move on to the next one, which is in Frome West Division, and it's a change. It's number 12, by the way, in case you haven't noticed. Change of use from 4 residential flats with C3 use to C1 use, which is hotel use. And Carlton, this one is yours.
Right, thank you, Chairman. This application is for change of use of 4 residential flats that are situated on the first and second floors of a building on Saxon Vale in the middle of Frome, and they want to convert those 4 flats into 8 separate ensuite bedrooms in association with a hotel use. Gives you an idea in the location of Frome where it is.
Carl, is your mic on? You're a bit dim.
Yeah.
Yeah, sorry.
Can you hear me? Yeah, so there we go. That's the existing floor plans as they stand at the moment. So nothing on the ground floor is changing. It's just the flats that are on the first and second floors. So it's the flat arrangement as it stands at the moment. And these are the elevations as they stand. So it's mostly for a change of use. There's a couple of changes with regard to vents, etc., and soil pipes that need to put in association with the change of use, because the increase in the number of ensuite bedrooms, ensuite bathrooms, etc. So this would be the layout. You'll notice double rooms, 8 of them. So obviously the premises would be visited with a key card type arrangement, like many Airbnbs. So very little changes to the actual appearance of the building within the street. A couple of vents which have in fact already been given approval, because this application was had a sister application for listed building consent for the changes to the building, which has already been approved by the council. Right, so that's the building in question, and in the middle of Frome. Okay, so the application is being recommended for approval, subject to a condition we work out where there's going to be a necessary bin store arrangement. There is land within the applicant's control, blue land, so there's a condition requiring that he provides a decent space in that sort of forecourt area there in the back for commercial bins, because obviously we're going from a domestic situation to a commercial one. So the council won't be picking up the commercial waste anymore. It'll be a private company. So in policy terms, the council has no specific policies where in terms of retaining any housing stock. Okay. Therefore, there are no policy basis for refusal. It is however, that, you know, the reason they're here tonight is that local division members are concerned about the loss of flats within Frome to this development. So, like I say, there's no policy principle reason we could refuse it in that respect. The only thing the council might be able to consider is any changes in between the two different uses, in terms of the character of the development. I can't think of any. You know, we're swapping one sleeping accommodation arrangement for another. So my recommendation to approve stands at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Carlton. Right, there doesn't appear to be any interest from speakers outside, so we'll come to the division members. They both begin with D, so I can't really differentiate. So I'm going to go for Martin D first.
Well, actually, I'll let Mick lead on this one. Thank you.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Mr. Dunk?
Yes, I was unhappy about this because it's not the sort of accommodation that we're particularly short of in Frome. There's a lot of Airbnb, as we all know. I think there's 3 or 4 in my street, and it's not very big. And I think that sort of covers what used to be the sort of B&B and hotel trade to a certain extent. But what we are short of is lettings of 1-bedroom, 2-bedroom flats. And although those might have been ideal for one person, those previous flats, I think a lot of the time you get couples in there. And it's just, we need that sort of thing in the town centre. It's sad that we don't have a policy that covers that, because that must be an omission, I think. But for me, it's not a replacement that I'd welcome, because you could say we need the business, you could say hotel accommodation is limited in Frome. I think we're in need of town centre living spaces or offices as a sort of priority above what is being asked for. And I don't know how we can hang that on any policy, but that's my general consensus opinion.
Thank you, Mick, for speaking. You're speaking for both of you, I believe. Okay. Simon, I'm going to ask you to answer a question here, because I have some sympathy with what Mick has just said, but there is no way, I believe, there's no, as Carlton would have pointed out, that you can't refuse an application because it's going to Airbnb, can you? That's just not right. Yeah.
That's correct, Chair. We don't have a policy that would prevent the change of use, which is sought for in the application. I think, as Carlton tried to explain, if you're unhappy with his recommendation, and we would suggest that it's a well thought out, well considered, and in accordance with your policy framework, what you've really got to do is consider the impacts of the proposed change in pattern of occupation which this application will have, and then that could be your reason for refusal. But other than that, we're recommending that the application as presented is acceptable.
Thank you, Simon, because that's what I wanted to make clear. So that Simon. So who's next? Adam, I think, is next.
Well, thank you, Chair. I noticed that we've got to make decisions in accordance with the development plan, and unless material considerations indicate otherwise. So it seems to me, in the absence of policy here, what are the material considerations? I know, is it a material consideration to lose housing in a town with a sort of housing crisis, particularly for smaller flats? Is that a material consideration we could use? And I think it probably is, isn't it? Because if providing housing is a material consideration against targets and so on, if we're losing accommodation, isn't that a consideration we can use? Thanks.
I mean, in terms of land uses that you would expect to be found in a town centre location like Frome, you'd expect a whole range of residential types of accommodation, including the type that's covered in the application. So that in itself, I don't think would be a reason for refusal that you should pursue, because there wouldn't be any policy support for it whatsoever.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Adam. Martin's going to come in quickly.
Yes, Chair, just to say, I think there's a danger of the committee creating policy on the hoof or seeking to create policy on the hoof. It isn't the forum for doing that. You know, that's the Somerset plan that's going to come forward. So I think, you know, as been said by the officers, you need to apply the policies as we have them, and whether there are any material considerations which might indicate a refusal. But at the moment, I think your clear advice from your officers that they can't support any or advise of any.
Thank you, Martin. I think we're getting there. Dawn. Well, Martin, yeah, but you had your chance just now. I'll come back to you in a minute after Dawn. Okay, Dawn.
So if it's a private, if they're already private flats, there's no need, well, there's no way that we would know that they would go to any kind of social housing anyway. They'd be privately rented. You know, you've heard New York, Paris, London, Frome. Frome is the up and coming, you know, destination. There are loads of events happening in Frome, and if you go to the Discover Frome information point, one of the big things we've got is that there is lack of hotel space. You know, the Cheese and Grain is full regularly. People come from abroad, well, they come from far. I mean, most of the postcodes of events that come to the Cheese and Grain are outside of Frome. So accommodation would be really very useful hotel-wise. So I think that this, I would probably support this.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Thank you, Dawn. Martin, D, I'll come back to you now.
I think if we're talking about Airbnb, there's nothing we can do technically to stop anybody renting their home out for Airbnb. I don't know why this is thinking about it. So presumably this is an application for a commercial hotel, isn't it? It says hotel use. This is surely a commercial application.
Who would like to answer that?
It's a very confusing grey area. If you go on the internet and look up, you know, when does an Airbnb start becoming sort of a hotel? Because if you've got lots of your own accommodation and you keep turning them all into Airbnbs, do you say collectively that's starting to become a hotel? So they are suggesting that it's hotel type accommodation, but there aren't any other facilities in there. So it's merely rooms connected for people to stay in. Okay.
Thank you, Carlton. Martin, are you okay? Do you get that? Yeah. Fine. Yeah, okay, Mick, you can come back.
It's just that we don't, as far as I know, have targets for hotels or Airbnb. We do have targets for accommodation. And if we lose 4, that goes against our target.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm bearing in mind the time.
Just say, Chairman, that we do have quite strong policy with regard to encouraging people to come to the district and visit. And this is one means where we encourage people to come in, spend their money in our district. And we also have other policies with regard to changes of use of town centre type buildings, and it encourages the use of commercial type activities.
Thank you, Carlton. I haven't seen a proposal yet. I think Dawn was close to making one.
Let me clear it. Yeah, I'm prepared to propose that we go with the officer recommendation.
And I'll second it.
And you're seconding it. Okay, Adam, you want to say something?
Yeah, just as far as we know, can I ask if people are going to be made homeless as a result of this application being given permission? Is that what will happen, as far as we know? Thank you.
Good question, but I don't think it